Welcome to Fanfiction Audiobooks. If you enjoy the content, liking and subscribing would be greatly appreciated. If you have any recommendation for novels, comment below. American Comics, Super Omega Mutant. Chapter 81 Eternal Interests, Black Widow's Betrayal. Although it was the same incident, the major media outlets in New York reported on different issues. Some focused on the murder of T'Challa, some focused on the fact that Norman and Harry were almost kidnapped, and some focused on the truth about Wakanda and the complete conflict between Roy and Captain America. After briefly browsing the reports, Roy closed the website. Just as he was wondering whether the old King T'Chaka, who had just experienced the pain of losing his son, would immediately bring people to New York to seek revenge on him, his cell phone rang. After seeing the name displayed on the screen was Black Widow, he answered the call without thinking too much. T'Chaka has returned to Wakanda with the bodies of T'Challa and his crew. After the call was connected, Black Widow said immediately, "Are you going back now?" Roy showed a surprised expression and said slowly, "Were you convinced by Nick Fury?" He had no idea what T'Chaka and Nick Fury talked about. But his intuition told him that it was most likely Nick Fury who persuaded T'Chaka not to come and seek revenge on him for the time being. As for why Nick Fury did this, the reason is not difficult to guess. Vibranium, and vibranium technology. Nick Fury would never do anything that has no benefit. Yes, it was Fury who convinced him. In addition, at this point, Black Widow paused, struggling over whether to tell Roy about the collaboration between SHIELD and Wakanda. After noticing that she stopped talking halfway, Roy smiled and said, "If I'm not mistaken, SHIELD and Wakanda have teamed up to deal with me. When are they going to start?" "After T'Challa's funeral." After hearing his words, Black Widow slowly said, "Half a year later." "Half a year later? You really know how to pick the time." Roy sighed in his heart. Then, he said to Black Widow, "Aren't you afraid that Nick Fury will be unhappy if you tell me this?" As soon as he finished speaking, Black Widow replied, "He was already dissatisfied with me before I called you. As soon as I left the Triskelion building, I found a few more guys following me." She hadn't originally planned to tell Roy about this. No matter what, she is an agent of SHIELD. Telling Roy about this would be tantamount to betraying SHIELD. However, she quickly changed her mind after discovering that Nick Fury had someone following her. "Since Nick Fury no longer trusts me, there is no need for me to be so professional. It's normal. He is a person who doesn't trust others completely," Roy said slowly. "On the surface, Nick Fury is a great boss. But it is not the truth." Roy clearly remembered that in the movie Captain America 2, when Nick Fury was discussing with Captain America, he proposed the so-called split management. No one will leak the secrets because no one knows all the secrets. Except himself. Although after arguing with Captain America, he told Captain America about the Insight Project, saying that Captain America had misjudged him and he would share his thoughts. He is a very nice person. Subsequent plots prove that what Nick Fury meant by sharing was just sharing what he thought could be shared. As for the rest, he still won't share it with others. Be careful yourself. Even though he talked to T'Chaka about 6 months later, he may not take action 6 months later. I even suspected that he deliberately told me the 6-month time frame. Or rather, he guessed at that time that I would call you," Black Widow said slowly. "Don't worry, he couldn't deal with me before, and he won't be able to deal with me in the future either," Roy replied confidently. Although he had not drawn any cards in the past 6 months, he could easily destroy SHIELD with the superpowers he possessed now. Even if Nick Fury called Big Mom back, he still couldn't stop him. "Let's do this first. If there is anything else, I will contact you again," Black Widow said slowly. "It is good," Roy replied. After hanging up the phone, he put his phone aside, picked up the controller, and started playing the 3A masterpiece that he had not yet completed. Time flies. A month passed in the blink of an eye. During this month, Roy lived a life similar to before. Develop superpowers. Develop the power of the Tarot Club. Accept private commissions from interested parties. Play cards with Daisy, Mary Jane, Black Widow, and others. Enjoy America's decadent life and more. For him, this month was not much different from the previous one. But for the people of Wakanda, this month has been a bit difficult. After T'Challa was killed, Wakanda, which had not received much attention, received a lot of attention. Then, people discovered that the backward agricultural country was just Wakanda in disguise. Wakanda, which appears to be no different from other African countries, is not only not backward, but also has precious resources such as vibranium, which has extremely excellent properties. Not only that, people also discovered that Captain America's shield was made of vibranium mixed with other metals. What happens next is simple. Wakanda has suffered the worst invasion in history. All organizations that are interested in vibranium, without exception, have sent teams to Wakanda to seize vibranium, either openly or secretly. Some countries, such as the United States, have dispatched elite troops from various military bases in Africa to Wakanda in the name of helping Wakanda. Although the United States claims to be helping Wakanda, anyone who is not an idiot can see that their real purpose is to turn Wakanda into the 51st state of the United States. The old King T'Chaka expressed strong dissatisfaction with the United States sending troops into Wakanda and contacted Nick Fury immediately. Not surprisingly, Nick Fury hung up on him. From a personal perspective, Nick Fury also doesn't want to see the United States send troops to invade Wakanda. But this is not something he can decide. Not to mention that he is just the director of SHIELD, even if he is the president, he can't stop this now. Because the existence of vibranium has driven all the major interest groups behind the scenes in the United States completely crazy. The cooperation between SHIELD and Wakanda lasted less than a month. Although the cooperation time was not long, it was completely enough for SHIELD. Before the end of the partnership, Wakanda had already given some vibranium and vibranium technology to SHIELD. Roy was not surprised at all that SHIELD and Wakanda ended their cooperation. Or rather, he guessed it after T'Chaka and T'Challa and his crew returned to Wakanda. There are no eternal enemies, no eternal friends, only eternal interests. As more and more countries and forces invaded Wakanda, T'Chaka had to gather all the Wakandans in the capital and rely on a giant energy shield to resist the invasion. However, for Wakanda, this is only a temporary solution and not a permanent solution. Manhattan, New York. Hellfire Detective Agency. After completing a new 3A masterpiece, Roy put down the controller and called Daisy to the office. Have the Osborns and the Knights of the Star Cross arrived in Wakanda yet? They arrived last night. They are now stationed on the grassland outside of Burning Xana, the capital of Wakanda. Daisy replied without any hesitation. Okay, then it's time for us to go over there. After saying that, Roy stood up and walked to Daisy, hugging Daisy's slender and attractive waist. Without any hesitation, he immediately performed water molecule transformation, transforming his and Daisy's bodies from flesh and blood into organic ice bodies. The next second after completing the transformation, he used water molecule teleportation and took Daisy to Wakanda. End of this chapter. Chapter 82 Ice Age, Strongest Defense. Chapter 82 Ice Age, Strongest Defense. In less than a minute, Roy and Daisy arrived at the grassland outside Burning Xana, the capital of Wakanda, from Manhattan, New York. To be precise, they arrived at the base of Osborn and his son and the Knights of the Stern Cross. They are not the only ones stationed on the grassland today, there are also people from many other countries and organizations. Inside the camouflage tent in the center of the base, Roy and Daisy in organic ice form appeared in the sight of Osborn and his son and others. As they watched, Roy and Daisy returned from their organic ice form to normal human form in the blink of an eye. Roy let go of Daisy's slender waist and looked at the Osborn father and son and others. Whether it is the Osborn father and son, or Alan and others from the Stern Cross Knights, they are now wearing battle suits made of vibranium. The Osborns are wearing a new Green Goblin armor made of vibranium. Alan and others, on the other hand, wore more modern vibranium combat suits. After just a quick glance at them, Roy retracted his gaze and said slowly, "You are not rookies either, so I won't say anything extra. You know very well what to do and what not to do. You'll have 3 minutes to prepare. In 3 minutes, I will lead you to capture Wakanda." As soon as he finished speaking, Osborn and his son, Alan, and others responded in unison, "Yes, sir." 3 minutes flew by. When the Osborn father and son, Alan, and others were fully armed and ready for battle, Roy took them and Daisy out of the base and headed towards Burning Xana, the capital of Wakanda. As soon as they left the base, they attracted the attention of others around them. "Roy Chen? Why is he here? The Stern Cross Knights are his troops? Are the first and second Green Goblin also his subordinates?" When they saw that the person walking in front of the team was Roy, the people in the surrounding area showed surprised expressions. Although S.H.I.E.L.D. knew early on that the Stern Cross Knights were a superhuman force formed by Roy, not many people in the outside world knew about this. Not long after, Roy brought Daisy and the others to the giant energy shield that completely covered the Wakanda capital, Burning Xana. Looking up at the giant energy shield, Roy slowly raised his right hand and transformed it into an organic ice form. Then, he pressed on the protective cover. This giant energy shield of Wakanda has stopped countless invaders from all over the world in the past month. Although this energy shield is not completely unbreakable, it is still not an easy task to break through the shield and enter it. After placing his right hand on the giant energy shield, Roy took a deep breath without any hesitation and used his freezing superpower. Ice Age. Roy silently prayed in his heart and used the Ice Age he developed. Under the gaze of everyone, starting from his position, the giant translucent energy shield began to be frozen at a speed visible to the naked eye. In less than half a minute, the giant energy shield covering Wakanda's capital, Burning Xana, was frozen into a clearly visible hemispherical ice wall. Not only that, the temperature in Wakanda's capital also began to drop alarmingly as the giant energy shield was frozen. The rapidly dropping temperature not only covered the buildings, flowers, plants, and trees inside the protective shield with frost, but also made the Wakandans inside experience a coldness they had never experienced in their lives. Having lived in the African continent since childhood, they never imagined that one day they would experience the feeling of being in Antarctica. They never expected that the energy shield, which they regarded as the strongest defense, would be easily defeated. With Roy's current strength, he can easily lower the temperature inside to -1 or 200 degrees Celsius and freeze all the Wakandans inside into ice sculptures. But he didn't do that. He really didn't like Mo, but he wasn't so perverted as to kill Mo whenever he saw him. After lowering the temperature inside to -20 to 30 degrees Celsius, he did not continue to lower the temperature. "Break!" Roy whispered, and the giant energy shield that had been frozen into a hemispherical ice wall shattered. The giant energy shield that has protected the Wakandans for countless years and is regarded by the Wakandans as the strongest defense has completely ended its historical mission today. Shattered ice fell from the sky like a rainstorm, landing in Wakanda's capital, Burning Xana. After getting rid of the giant energy shield, Roy turned to Daisy and the others and said, "I'll go in first, and you're responsible for preventing others from entering." After saying that, he used teleportation and disappeared from Daisy and the others' sight. Soon, he arrived at the palace of Wakanda. To be precise, he came to the king's hall and met the old King T'Chaka sitting on the vibranium throne, Queen Raymond, Princess Shuri, Okoye, the captain of Dora's personal guard, Wakabi, the minister of Wakanda's military department, and those strange-looking tribal elders. When he appeared, the members of Dora's personal guard in the king's hall immediately raised their vibranium spears, quickly stepped forward and surrounded him. The next second, these members of Dora's personal guards were frozen into lifelike ice sculptures by him. While freezing them, Roy also made himself a frost throne that was more gorgeous than the vibranium throne, and sat down calmly. Then, he said to T'Chaka on the vibranium throne, "I'll give you one last chance to give orders. Let the Wakanda civilians hand over all their vibranium products, and I can let them leave here alive." As soon as he finished speaking, Okoye, the captain of Dora's personal guard, attacked him with a vibranium spear, looking like he was determined to defend the king's dignity to the death. Impact Beam. Roy did not use his freezing superpowers to freeze her into an ice sculpture, but instead released impact beams from his eyes. The moment he saw his eyes flashing red, Okoye realized that something was wrong and jumped to the side. She moves very quickly. But she still couldn't avoid the impact beam fired by Roy. Bang! The laser-like impact beam drew a graceful arc in the air and hit Okoye's head accurately. Without any suspense, Okoye's head suddenly exploded like a watermelon falling from a high altitude, brain and blood splattered everywhere, and his body fell to the ground uncontrollably with a thump. After piercing through Okoye's head, Roy did not stop the impact beam. Continuing to use the trajectory bending ability, the impact beam once again drew a beautiful arc and shot the head of Military Minister Wakabi. Only when Wakabi also turned into a headless corpse and fell to the ground did he stop using the impact beam. T'Chaka glanced at the bodies of Okoye and Wakabi, then said to Roy, "Where are the people other than civilians? What do you think?" Roy asked back about T'Chaka. "He can spare the civilians of Wakanda, but he will not spare the royal family, tribal elders, armed personnel, etc. of Wakanda. Not massacring civilians is a moral obligation as a human being. Not letting go of royal family members, tribal elders and others is what a conqueror should do." T'Chaka was silent for a few seconds, then stood up and put on the Black Panther helmet. Although he didn't speak, he had already answered Roy with practical actions. Roy didn't say anything else, and calmly used his freezing superpower. End of this chapter. Chapter 83 Tyrant, 4 Worlds Ice Array. Chapter 83 Tyrant, 4 Realms Ice Formation. After T'Challa was killed, the old King T'Chaka became the strongest fighting force in Wakanda. Although he is the strongest fighter, his strength is only slightly stronger than ordinary people like Okoye. Even with the blessing of the Black Panther god Bast, he still couldn't resist the weakness brought by the years. After putting on the Black Panther helmet, the old King T'Chaka, who had not taken action himself for many years, showed agility and speed that did not match his age, and pounced towards Roy like a real Black Panther. He knew that he was far inferior to Roy in strength, and he also knew that he could never defeat Roy no matter what. But at this moment, he had no other choice but to do so. As a king, he cannot retreat because behind him are the common people of Wakanda. As a father, he cannot retreat because behind him are his beloved wife and daughter. In just a blink of an eye, the old King T'Chaka appeared in front of Roy, and the vibranium claws on his right hand attacked his heart with lightning. Roy did not dodge, as if he did not see T'Chaka's attack, and sat on the frost throne with a calm face. He also did not freeze the attacking T'Chaka into an ice sculpture, but just sat there motionless. Under the watchful eyes of Queen Ramonda, Princess Shuri, and others, T'Chaka's right hand pierced directly into Roy's chest. Seeing this scene, expressions of surprise immediately appeared on their dark faces. However, the next second, they found that things were not as simple as they seemed. T'Chaka's right hand did pierce Roy's chest, but he did not cause any harm to Roy. Blurred. Before he could touch him, Roy made his chest vanish. At the beginning, the ability of virtualization granted by the Phantom Cat card only allowed him to virtualize his entire body. Through his continuous efforts and development, he successfully mastered the technique of blurring part of his body. Laugh. Roy did not give T'Chaka another chance to attack him. He released an adamantium bone claw from his right hand, which instantly pierced T'Chaka's heart. At the same time, the cold air he released early in the morning completely enveloped Queen Raymonda and others, freezing them into ice sculptures. Retracting the adamantium claw in his right hand, Roy stood up, walked over T'Chaka's body, came to the vibranium throne in the center of the hall and slowly sat down. The next second after he sat down, 12 ice men who looked exactly like him in his organic ice form appeared in the hall. Ice Clone. The moment he obtained the Iceman card, he mastered the ability to create ice, water, and steam clones, and control the clones. But he had never used this ability in front of others before, let alone in combat. When these 12 ice clones appeared, he immediately controlled them without any hesitation. These ice clones do not have self-awareness, but are more like puppets. Without his control, these 12 ice clones wouldn't be able to fight, let alone move. Under his control, the 12 ice clones disappeared from the King's Hall in the blink of an eye and appeared in other places in the palace and different areas of the city. Water molecules teleport. Even with his control, the ice clone cannot use the superpowers of other mutants and can only use the superpowers possessed by Iceman. Roy sat on the vibranium throne and controlled his ice clone, killing Wakanda warriors in the palace and the city like mowing the grass. Outside the city, Daisy, the Osborn father and son, and members of the Star-Crossed Knights are stopping anyone who tries to enter the capital of Wakanda. Whether it is Daisy or the members of the Stern-Crossed Knights, everyone now has a Green Goblin skateboard. At the beginning, many people tried to enter the capital of Wakanda. But after discovering that Daisy and her group even killed American soldiers, not many people dared to do so. It was obvious that Roy had given them the order to kill without mercy. The battle outside the city ended quickly. The fighting in the city did not last long. Not long after, 4 ice clones left the city and headed out of the city. Under Roy's control, the 4 ice clones located in the 4 directions of southeast, northwest, northeast, and southwest performed the new moves he developed. 4 Realms Ice Array. With the ice clones in the 4 directions of southeast, northwest, and northeast as the core, Roy created a rectangular ice barrier that was even larger than the giant energy shield, covering the capital of Wakanda. The ice wall of the 4 Realms Ice Array does not look thick. Compared with the area of the ice array, it can even be said to be ridiculously thin, less than 10 centimeters thick. But the soldiers and mercenaries from various countries outside the city did not dare to launch any attack on the ice wall. Not only that, after seeing the 4 Realms Ice Array that completely enveloped the capital of Wakanda, they knew that Roy was going to monopolize Wakanda's vibranium mines. Apart from this reason, they could not think of any other reason. They were not wrong, Roy really wanted to monopolize Wakanda's vibranium mines. He didn't care that the scattered vibranium outside fell into the hands of other people. But he will not hand over the vibranium mine in the capital of Wakanda to anyone. This is his trophy. If anyone wants to steal it, he will send that person to hell with his own hands. The news that Roy had captured the capital of Wakanda quickly spread throughout the world. Not only that, it also became common knowledge that the first and second Green Goblins were his subordinates and that the Stern-Crossed Knights were a superhuman force. On the first day that Roy used the 4 Realms Ice Array to completely isolate the capital of Wakanda, a large number of reporters rushed to Wakanda from all over the world and came to the grassland outside the city. At the same time, military satellites from various countries were also aimed at the capital of Wakanda. Roy didn't care about what was happening outside. When Daisy and the others arrived at the palace, he gave them the order to confiscate vibranium products from Wakanda civilians. During this process, many passionate young people in Wakanda rebelled. Roy did not show any mercy to these rebels and gave the Stern-Crossed Knights the order to kill all rebels without mercy. Although the Stern Knights only had more than 80 people, now that the Wakanda warriors had been slaughtered by Roy, the Stern Knights easily suppressed the resistance of the entire city. It only took 3 days for the Stern-Crossed Knights to confiscate all vibranium products from the Wakanda civilians. After confirming that all the vibranium products in the hands of the civilians had been confiscated, Roy opened an exit on the ice wall of the 4 Realms Ice Array and let the Stern-Crossed Knights drive them out. As soon as these civilians left the capital of Wakanda, they were stopped by soldiers and reporters from various countries outside the city. Soldiers from various countries immediately conducted detailed body searches on them, trying to find any items made of vibranium on them. After discovering that they did not have any vibranium products on them, they stopped stopping them. After the soldiers had carried out their orders, it was then the turn of reporters from various countries to interview them. Without any suspense, these Wakanda civilians whose vibranium products were confiscated and who were driven out of their homes, without exception, condemned Roy and the Stern Cross Knights in tears, describing Roy as the most brutal tyrant in history. Not only that, after knowing that it was a live broadcast, many people started cursing in front of the camera and used all kinds of dirty words to greet Roy. However, they didn't curse for long, as they were frozen into ice sculptures under the gaze of reporters and spectators. End of this chapter. Chapter 84 Hulk and Abomination, Card Fusion Mission. Chapter 84 Hulk and Abomination, Card Fusion Mission. The sudden change caused the surrounding reporters and photographers to unconsciously take a few steps back. Obviously, Roy was dissatisfied with the insults from the Wakandans, so he used his freezing power to freeze those who insulted him into ice sculptures. When these people were frozen into ice sculptures, the reporters and photographers at the scene immediately scanned the surroundings. However, they did not see Roy. Roy was not nearby at this time, but was sitting on the vibranium throne in the King's Hall. He had guessed this situation early on. All their vibranium products were confiscated, and they were driven out of their homes. If possible, the Wakandan civilians who were driven out would have eaten him alive immediately. Even if reporters from various countries outside the city do not interview them, they will take the initiative to find these reporters and condemn and insult them in front of the camera. Even if I can't beat you, I will still scold you in public. That's the mentality of those Wakandans. Roy couldn't control others from insulting him. But he can let others know that there is a price to pay for insulting him. He is not the kind of person who would remain indifferent if he was insulted in public. If you dare to scold me, I will kill you. Even if he was watched by audiences all over the world, he would not hesitate at all. After freezing the ignorant Wakandans into ice sculptures in front of reporters and live viewers, Roy, sitting on the vibranium throne, stopped using his water molecule perception. Then, he used the ghost's teleportation ability and left the King's Hall. City Shield Control Center. Norman and Harry sat in front of the control panel, checking the performance and values of the City Shield. When the Stern Cross Knights confiscated the vibranium products, Roy assigned them the task of repairing the city's protective shield. After 3 days of hard work, they finally repaired the city's protective shield that was destroyed by Roy's Ice Age. As long as all the data is checked and confirmed to be without other problems, the city shield covering the capital of Wakanda can be opened again. At this moment, Roy appeared out of thin air in the control center like a ghost. "How's the repair going?" Without any hesitation, Roy asked Norman. "We are still conducting final inspections. If nothing unexpected happens, it should have been repaired." Norman turned to look at Roy and said respectfully, "Restart the shield once you've confirmed everything is okay." Roy said slowly. Although he has now replaced the city's protective shield with the Four Realms Ice Array, completely isolating the capital of Wakanda. But the Four Realms Ice Array requires him to stay in the capital of Wakanda in order to continue to exist. If he left, within a few hours, the barrier-like Four Realm Ice Array would gradually melt due to the high temperature in Africa. "Okay, sir," Norman replied immediately. After hearing Norman answer Roy like a servant, Harry sighed helplessly. It didn't take long for Norman and Harry to complete the final check and confirm that all the performance and data of the city shield were in normal condition. After confirming that there were no problems, they decisively activated the city shield, covering the capital of Wakanda. As the city's protective shield reappeared, Roy lifted the rectangular barrier like Four Realm Ice formation. Grassland outside the city. Under the gaze of soldiers, journalists, and Wakanda civilians from various countries, the miraculous Four Realms ice array quickly dissipated like mist. After just a few seconds, the Four Realms ice array completely disappeared, as if it had never appeared. Although the Four Realms ice array disappeared, the reactivated city shield appeared in their sight. Manhattan, New York. When the city's protective shield once again covered the capital of Wakanda, Roy took Daisy back to the penthouse on the Sky Building. Although the capital of Wakanda has now become his private territory, he has no intention of living there permanently. Compared to the capital of Wakanda, which is located in the center of the African continent, it is more convenient to live in New York. After returning to his residence, Roy said to Daisy, "You've worked hard these past few days. Go and have a rest first." "Yeah." Daisy nodded and turned to walk towards her room. Soon, she disappeared from Roy's sight. After Daisy left, Roy sat down on the sofa in the living room, took out a bottle of whiskey from the system space, opened the cork, and drank directly from the bottle, while thinking about the next arrangements. The matter of Wakanda can now come to an end. Although there are still many Wakandans alive, without vibranium, they will only live the same life as other black people in Africa. Not to mention the trouble it will cause him, it will even be a question whether they will have enough food to eat in the future. From frugality to luxury is easy, from luxury to frugality. What awaits them is not only a life of poverty, but also psychological despair. After some not very rigorous thinking, Roy decided to continue his previous life. As for Wakanda's vibranium, he has no plans to sell it to anyone for the time being. He is not short of money now, nor does he want anything in particular. In addition, once vibranium becomes widespread, it may cause unpredictable troubles. After making the decision, Roy stood up and prepared to go to the master bedroom bathroom to take a hot bath to relax. At this moment, the system suddenly issued a card fusion task. Card fusion mission: defeat Hulk and Abomination. Task reward: card fusion times *2. Task time limit: 1 month. Task progress: not completed. Looking at the task panel in front of him, Roy frowned slightly. When the system was just upgraded to version 2.0, he was wondering when the system would release the card fusion task. Because the system has not yet released the card fusion task, he is somewhat suspicious whether this function is broken. It turns out that the card fusion task feature is not broken. After browsing the contents on the task panel, Roy simply closed the panel and continued to go to the bathroom in the master bedroom. Be it Hulk or Abomination. To him now, none of them can be considered strong. In addition, the system gave a 1-month deadline for the task this time, so he had plenty of time to find the whereabouts of the two of them. After taking a hot bath in the master bedroom bathroom for more than half an hour, Roy slowly came to Daisy's room. "Help me find 2 people," Roy said to Daisy. "Who are you looking for?" Daisy replied immediately. "Bruce Banner and Emil Bronsky." Roy named Hulk and Abomination. Daisy didn't ask why Roy was looking for them, and quickly replied, "No problem." After saying that, Daisy opened her laptop and immediately searched for information about Banner and Bronsky. Roy said nothing more and turned and left Daisy's bedroom. A week later. Brazil, São Paulo City. In an ordinary canning factory, Banner, wearing old clothes, was repairing the malfunctioning equipment. Although he did not have a PhD in mechanical engineering, he had no difficulty repairing some common factory equipment. Without much effort, he repaired the old device in front of him, which was about the same age as himself. Just as he packed up his tools and prepared to return to his office, he suddenly had a bad premonition. Without any hesitation, he immediately looked around with a vigilant look. End of this chapter. Chapter 86, Elementalization, the hatred that flees without a fight. Chapter 86, Elementalization, the hatred that flees without a fight. This was not a sudden decision on his part, but something Roy had decided long ago. He had this idea the moment he received the task. Although the system did not require him to defeat Hulk and Abomination at the same time, in order to make this mission more challenging, Roy added 2 additional requirements to himself, defeating them at the same time and using only Iceman's superpowers. It was he who planned the Abomination fighting with Hulk here. 4 days ago, Roy knew that Banner was hiding in this canning factory. But he did not come to find Banner immediately. Instead, he asked Daisy to cleverly leak Banner's whereabouts to General Ross's men. Daisy used some tricks to make General Ross's men mistakenly believe that they had discovered a target suspected to be Banner. After hearing Roy's words, the expression of hatred suddenly became solemn. Although he didn't know why Roy was here, his intuition told him that Roy's appearance here was not a coincidence. Unlike Abomination, Hulk had no idea who Roy was and immediately started yelling at him. Hulk is not nearly as smart as Banner, his IQ is about the same as a 5 or 6-year-old child. Although not very smart, Hulk knew that he was underestimated. After roaring like a wild beast, Hulk rushed towards Roy without any hesitation. The running Hulk is like a heavy truck running at full speed, giving people an unstoppable and domineering feeling. Soon, Hulk came in front of Roy and swung a fist bigger than Roy's head. Roy did not dodge, just stood there motionless, as if he didn't see it. Just when Hulk's fist was about to hit him, he used Iceman's superpowers. Elementalize. Hulk's fist passed through Roy's body easily as if it passed through smoke. What's happening here? A confused expression appeared on Hulk's big green face. Hulk isn't the only one confused. After seeing this scene, Abomination also showed an expression of surprise. Like Ice Age and 4 Realms Ice Formation, Elementalization is also a new move developed by Roy on his own. When developing this new move, he drew inspiration from the ice fruit in One Piece. The Iceman can actually turn himself into water vapor. Roy simply further improved this ability on this basis and named it Elementalization. In terms of effect, there is overlap between the Elementalization and the Phantom Cat's virtualization. But Roy still developed the Elementalization. It was not for any other reason, just because he wanted to achieve an elemental effect similar to that of the ice fruit. Although he didn't know what was going on, Hulk, whose IQ was about the same as that of a child, didn't think much about it and continued to attack Roy. However, no matter how he attacked Roy, he could not hurt Roy in his elemental state. To most people, Hulk and Abomination are both powerful superhumans. But to Roy, their strength was just okay. Hulk and Abomination couldn't even touch him if he didn't want to be hit by them. After discovering that his attacks were completely unable to hurt Roy, Hulk not only did not stop, but also began to attack more violently, as if he was determined to defeat Roy at all costs. Roy ignored Hulk's attack, looked at Abomination calmly, and said to Abomination, "Why don't you try?" Abomination did not answer Roy, but took a few steps back with a wary look on his face. He was now certain that Roy was coming for him and Hulk. Although he didn't know what Roy was planning, he knew that staying here was not a good thing. After taking a look at the increasingly angry Hulk and Roy who was standing there allowing Hulk to attack him, Abomination quickly made a decision. Retreat. Under Roy's gaze, Abomination turned and ran without any hesitation. However, he had not run far when Roy appeared in front of him and stopped him. "I didn't give you permission to leave," Roy said to Abomination. After seeing Roy appear in front of him, Abomination immediately turned his head and looked in the direction of Hulk. He thought Roy had abandoned Hulk and appeared in front of him. It turns out that he thought too much. Hulk continued to attack Roy, who was standing in front of him and constantly provoking him, just like the Berserker. "Two Roys? How can this be? Is it a clone? Or an illusion?" Abomination looked at Roy in front of him with vigilance, his brain working frantically, and began to guess what was going on. Although he didn't say anything, Roy knew what he was thinking and said slowly, "Don't guess. This is not an illusion, nor is it a clone. What you see is me." Roy was telling the truth, and it was indeed him that Abomination saw. Whether he is in front of Hulk or in front of Abomination, it is still him. This is not a new move he developed, but an ability that Iceman already possesses. After transforming into water vapor, Iceman can retain his consciousness and abilities, and can appear in different places at the same time. To put it simply, Roy is now controlling two elemental bodies at the same time. In principle, this is no different from controlling an ice clone. If there is any difference, it is that the two bodies he is controlling now are both the original bodies. Abomination did not believe Roy. He suddenly exerted force with his legs, burst out at the fastest speed, and left in another direction. Abomination is not a faint of heart. But at this moment he still felt an indescribable sense of fear. Roy now gave him the same feeling as a ghost in a horror movie. The Abomination ran wildly at an astonishing speed. But just like before, he hadn't run far when the third Roy appeared in front of him. You are an elite in the US military after all. It would be too shameful to flee without fighting, Roy said to Abomination. Abomination still said nothing and punched Roy hard on the head. Although he could use elementalization to neutralize the attacks of hatred, Roy did not do so. When the hateful fist came in front of him, he raised his right hand and grabbed the hateful fist. Freeze! In just a moment, the right arm of hate was frozen by the temperature of more than 200 degrees below zero. Before Abomination could react, Roy exerted a little force with his right hand. Boom! The Abomination's right arm shattered, turning into large and small ice cubes that scattered all over the ground. The difference is too big. In front of Roy, hating the weak is like a newborn baby. After crushing the Abomination's right arm, Roy sighed helplessly and said slowly, I thought you could bring me some fun, but now it seems that I overestimated you. Forget it, no more wasting time. As soon as he finished speaking, Roy grabbed the remaining left arm of Abomination. At the same time, he, who had been using elementalization to dissolve Hulk's attacks, raised his right hand and grabbed Hulk's fist. Freeze! Abomination and Roy in front of Hulk spoke at the same time. End of this chapter. Chapter 87, The Descent of the Gods, The Might of the Ice Emperor. Chapter 87, The Descent of the Gods, The Might of the Ice Emperor. The horrifyingly low temperature instantly enveloped Hulk and Abomination, freezing them into ice sculptures. If Roy wanted to kill them, he only needed to exert a little force to smash Hulk and Abomination, who were frozen into ice sculptures, like breaking glass. After taking a look at Hulk and Abomination, Roy first restored himself to his normal form. Except for the one standing in front of hatred, the other two of him quickly dissipated like mist, as if they had never appeared. After freeing the other two bodies, he picked up the frozen Abomination with one hand and brought Abomination to Hulk. Putting Abomination and Hulk together, he performed a water molecule transformation, transforming both himself and Abomination Hulk into a special organic ice form. Water molecules teleport. The next second after completing the transformation of water molecules, he decisively used water molecule teleportation and left the factory with Abomination and Hulk. In just a minute or two, Roy, Abomination and Hulk crossed the Atlantic Ocean from Sao Paulo, Brazil to Wakanda in the center of the African continent. To be precise, we arrived at the grassland outside the capital of Wakanda. A week ago, soldiers and journalists from all over the world gathered here. Now, when the city shield covering the capital of Wakanda was restarted, the soldiers and reporters from various countries who gathered here left. As for the Wakanda civilians who were driven out of the capital, they also chose to leave and build new homes in other areas of Wakanda. After bringing Abomination and Hulk here, Roy restored himself and the two of them from their special organic ice forms to normal flesh and blood. At the same time, he released the frozen state on Abomination and Hulk, allowing them to regain consciousness and mobility. You have no grudge against me, and you have a certain value to me, so I will give you a chance to choose. Submit to me, or die here. I'll give you a minute to think about it. As soon as Hulk and Abomination regained consciousness, Roy's voice rang out. Although he now has a lot of subordinates, in terms of individual combat power, whether it is Norman and Harry, or the other people in the Stern Cross Knights, they are no match for Hulk and Abomination. It would be a bit of a waste to kill them like this. Hearing his words, displeased expressions appeared on Hulk and Abomination's faces at the same time. Abomination first looked at his right arm, which was broken at the root, and then looked around. He didn't think for too long and quickly replied, "If I choose to surrender, will you really spare my life?" "Of course," Roy replied. As soon as he finished speaking, Abomination said seriously, "I choose to surrender. Although this may make you look like a coward, compared to being killed, it's better to be a little cowardly." Roy looked at his broken right arm and said slowly, "I'll have someone make you a vibranium arm later." "Vibranium arm?" Abomination was stunned for a moment. Then, he quickly replied, "Thank you, sir." Roy nodded, turned to look at Hulk, and continued, "What about you? Hulk won't surrender easily." Hulk is unconvinced. "Hulk is no weaker than you." After hearing Roy's words, Hulk said in a muffled voice. Unlike the Abomination, who have already discovered that this is not Brazil but Wakanda, Hulk does not know at this time that Roy has brought them to Wakanda. "Not weaker than me?" Looking at the Hulk with a look of dissatisfaction on his big green face, Roy smiled and shook his head, then slowly said, "Since you are not convinced, I will fight you again, in a way that you approve of." As soon as he finished speaking, Roy used the Iceman's superpowers. As the Iceman's superpowers were used, he absorbed the surrounding water molecules like a black hole. As Hulk and Abomination watched, he first transformed into his crystal-clear Iceman form. Afterwards, the body grew larger and stronger at a speed visible to the naked eye. After just a few seconds, Roy, who was only 1.8 meters tall, turned into an ice giant who looked like a god and reached a height of 300 meters. Ice King. This is the name Roy gave to this move. By absorbing the surrounding water molecules, it increases its body size and gains superpowers that match its body size. Although he is now very big, he looks like a god from mythology who has descended to the earth. But 300 meters high is not the limit of Ice Emperor's move. As long as there are enough water molecules, his body size can be further increased. Although he had not specifically tested the limit of this move, on Earth where 70% of the surface was covered by oceans, there was no problem in raising the body to a height of tens of thousands of meters. If he absorbed all the water molecules on Earth, he could even become larger than the Earth. Is he really human? Looking at Roy in front of him, who looked like a god descending from the earth, disgusted couldn't help but take a breath. At the same time, he began to be glad that he had chosen to surrender. Thinking of this, he unconsciously turned his head and glanced at Hulk next to him. Like him, Hulk also showed a surprised expression at this time. Although Hulk's IQ is similar to that of a child, he also understands one thing, that is, the bigger the body, the stronger the power. However, no matter how surprised he was, Hulk still had no intention of surrendering immediately. Not only that, an idea popped into Hulk's mind. Defeat Roy. Prove to everyone that Hulk is the strongest. When this thought popped into his mind, Hulk immediately felt a strong desire to fight. Without any hesitation, he exerted force with his legs, jumped high, and launched an attack. Ideas are beautiful, but reality is cruel. Although Hulk now has a strong desire to fight, in the face of the absolute gap in strength, no matter how strong the desire is, it cannot change the outcome. Roy didn't let Hulk jump on him. The moment Hulk jumped high, he swung his right fist at Hulk. Boom! The giant frost fist, which was bigger than Hulk's body, hit Hulk like a meteorite falling from the sky. There was no suspense at all. Due to the absolute power gap, Hulk was knocked to the grassland by Roy's punch. The earth shook violently as if there was an earthquake. Spiderweb-like cracks instantly spread out for hundreds of meters, and an impact crater with a diameter of tens of meters appeared on the grassland. The vibration and shock waves generated by the collision swept in all directions like waves. The moment Roy swung his fist, he realized that something bad was happening. The abomination had not run far when it was blown away by the shock wave like a leaf. Roy only threw one punch and then retracted it. When he retracted his right fist, Hulk appeared in his sight again. At this time, Hulk was lying motionless in the center of the crater. He wasn't knocked unconscious, but his condition was worse than being unconscious. His head was covered in blood, and his whole body was filled with an intense pain he had never experienced before. Pain. Excruciating pain. Hulk felt nothing now except pain. End of this chapter. Chapter 88, The Number 1 Threat, Soul Draining. Chapter 88, The Number 1 Threat, Soul Draining. Submit, or die. Looking at Hulk in the crater, Roy said again. Although he doesn't like Banner very much, he still likes Hulk quite a bit. He didn't really want to kill the Hulk if he could. However, if Hulk would rather die than surrender, he wouldn't mind killing Hulk. Hulk is indeed no match for him. But Daisy, Norman, Harry, and others are no match for Hulk. If Hulk was fooled by others and attacked Daisy and the others, it would be difficult for Daisy and the others to survive. After hearing Roy's words, Hulk, who was lying in the center of the crater, struggled to sit up. The unconvinced look on the big green face had completely disappeared. What replaced it was an unspeakable feeling of grievance. Until this point, Hulk didn't know who Roy was. From his point of view, he was sleeping well at home. As a result, a group of unfamiliar people ran up to Banner and shot him wildly. Although he didn't particularly like Banner, he knew that he would not be able to survive if Banner died. In order to prevent the weak Banner from being killed, he took over Banner's body. When he was fighting with Abomination, he still had a feeling that he was protecting Banner. Then when Roy showed up, things started to change. Roy first teased him as if he were untouchable air. Then, it turned into an ice giant hundreds of meters tall and punched him hard, causing him to experience the most intense pain he had ever experienced. Hulk did nothing wrong. Why does everyone have to pick on Hulk? Hulk just wants to survive. Sitting in the crater, Hulk felt more and more aggrieved. Is he going to cry? Seeing Hulk's shoulders twitching and him sitting on the ground with a look of grievance on his face without saying a word, Roy frowned slightly. After thinking for a while, he also sat down. Although he simply sat down, the ground shook at the moment he sat down. After sitting down, Roy stretched out the fingers of his right hand, controlled the strength, and gently poked Hulk. Okay, don't feel wronged. You are a boy, and you won't be handsome if you cry. Roy said as if he was coaxing a child. Hulk didn't cry. Hulk looked up at Roy and said stubbornly. Yes, you didn't cry. I was wrong. Be my subordinate, and I promise that no one will dare to bully you in the future. That ugly guy next to him can't do it, and neither can Banner. After saying that, Roy clenched his right fist and placed it in front of Banner. Looking at the fist that was several times bigger than his body, Hulk slowly raised his right hand. The next second, two fists of completely different colors and sizes collided with each other. Although Hulk has not yet expressed his willingness to surrender, he has already given his answer with his actions. After bumping fists with Hulk, Roy did not continue to maintain the Ice Emperor form, but restored himself to the size of a normal human. When his body returned to normal size, he performed water molecule transformation, transforming himself from organic ice form back into flesh and blood. At the same time, the message that the mission was completed appeared in his sight. The mission has been completed. Task rewards have been sent. Turning off the system information that only he could see, Roy said to Hulk and Abomination, "Follow me." After saying that, he took the lead and walked towards the capital of Wakanda. Hulk and Abomination followed without any hesitation. King's Hall. Roy sat on the vibranium throne and said to Norman, Harry, and Alan, "They are my new subordinates. The one with the broken arm is Brinsky, you can also call him Abomination, and the one next to him is Hulk." After hearing his words, Norman and the other two all showed puzzled expressions. They didn't know Hulk and Abomination, and had never heard of them. After introducing Hulk and Abomination, Roy continued, "I broke Brinsky's right arm. Norman, make him a vibranium arm according to his body size." "Okay, sir." Norman replied without any hesitation. "Alan, please arrange accommodation for them both. There's nothing else to do. You all can go down," Roy said slowly. "Yes, sir." Alan replied seriously. After Norman, Alan, and the others left the King's Hall, Roy opened the system panel. Number of card fusions, 2. He had not drawn any cards in the past 6 months, so the only cards that met the fusion requirements were still the SR level Phantom Cat card and the R level Ghost card. Roy didn't think too long and quickly made a decision. Although he didn't know what special abilities the Ghost Cat, a fusion of the Phantom Cat and the Ghost, would have. But he still decided to fuse the 2 cards. "Do you want to fuse SR Phantom Cat and R Ghost cards?" Having made his decision, Roy immediately chose yes. Just like the fusion of the Wolverine card and the Spider-Man card, the moment he made his choice, the Phantom Cat card and the Ghost card in the deck disappeared. Fusion is complete. Get the Fusion Ghost Cat card. Number of card fusions, 1. Deck update. Deck, SSR Iceman, SR Card King, SR Fireman, SR Cyclops, R Angel, R Agent 0, Fusion Wolverine, Fusion Ghost Cat. As the deck refreshed, instructions for the Fusion Ghost Cat card appeared in Roy's mind. There are 3 superpowers in total for Ghost Cat cards. They are virtualization, teleportation, and soul absorption. Not to mention the abilities of virtualization and teleportation, which are inherited from the Phantom Cat card and the Ghost card. Although these are abilities of the original cards, both virtualization and teleportation have been enhanced. The duration of the virtual state has been extended to a certain extent, and can last up to 5 minutes. The teleportation distance has also increased from the original 500 meters to 3000 meters. As for soul absorption, it is a new ability gained after the fusion. Soul absorption, Ghost Cat's fusion ability, absorbs the souls of enemies killed by itself to strengthen itself. After browsing the description of the Ghost Cat card, Roy closed the system panel. An office in the Pentagon. General Ross held a cigar in his mouth and browsed the documents in front of him. At this moment, there was a knock on the door. "Come in." General Ross took off his cigar and spoke. As soon as he finished speaking, the office door was pushed open and a female assistant in military uniform walked in. "General, Captain Brinsky, who was heading to Sao Paulo, Brazil, was captured by Roy Chen," the female assistant said quickly. "Captured?" General Ross frowned and asked immediately, "What exactly is going on?" The female assistant replied without any hesitation, "Captain Brinsky led the team to the canning factory in Sao Paulo, Brazil, and had a fierce battle with Bruce Banner in the factory. Not long after the battle began, Roy Chen arrived at the factory. According to the soldiers at the scene, Roy Chen first destroyed Captain Bronsky's right hand, and then froze Captain Bronsky and Bruce Banner into ice sculptures. Finally, they left the factory with them and their whereabouts are unknown." Just as General Ross was about to say something else, the phone on the table suddenly rang. General Ross picked up the microphone without thinking twice. The next second, the expression on his face became extremely ugly. After hanging up the phone, he said to the female assistant in front of him, "Roy Chen just appeared outside the capital of Wakanda. I have to attend an emergency meeting now. Please arrange for the Brazilian arrest team to come back first." After saying this, General Ross stood up. "Yes, General." The female assistant replied quickly. Not long after, General Ross arrived at a conference room in the Pentagon. Although he came as soon as he received the call, there were not many seats left when he arrived at the conference room. There are now 20 to 30 senior U.S. military officials sitting in the conference room, the lowest of whom is a major general. In addition to their military ranks being generals, General Ross also discovered that the generals in the conference room came from different branches of the military. Generals from the Navy, Army, Air Force, and Marine Corps all came. General Ross, a lieutenant general in the Army, came and sat down in the empty seat next to his Army colleague. When all the participants arrived, a gray-haired Air Force admiral said, "More than 10 minutes ago, the military satellite responsible for monitoring the capital of Wakanda captured a group of pictures like this." As soon as the Air Force general finished speaking, a video started playing on the screen in the conference room. "This is..." After watching the video, both General Ross and others showed shocked expressions. "You are not mistaken. This ice giant is Roy Chen. He is an astonishing 300 meters tall." The President and the Secretary of Defense also received the video. "5 minutes ago, the President authorized us to jointly implement an operation plan called Top Threat with S.H.I.E.L.D. End of this chapter. Chapter 89 Daredevil and Number 039, S Commission, The Bottom Line of Being a Human. Chapter 89 Daredevil's Commission, The Bottom Line of Being a Human. Night. New York, Hell's Kitchen. Roy stood on the roof of a building, looking down at Hell's Kitchen. Although he now lives in Manhattan, he hasn't been to Hell's Kitchen in a long time. To be precise, after killing Mr. Negative and Hammerhead Joseph and others, he never came to Hell's Kitchen again. Hell's Kitchen hasn't changed much compared to before. The gangs led by Mr. Negative and Hammerhead Joseph have disappeared, and new gangs have emerged to occupy the territories that originally belonged to the Devil Gang, the Magic Gang and other gangs. Given the current situation in New York, even if Hell's Kitchen was completely demolished, the gangs in Hell's Kitchen would at most just move to another place. Unless America undergoes a major cleansing that will completely transform it, such as completely changing its political system. Otherwise, no matter how hard the New York City government and the New York police try, they will not be able to change the situation where gangs are rampant in New York City. Blown by the night breeze, Roy calmly used his water molecule perception to look for a suitable test target. He didn't come here to fight crime, but to test the soul-sucking ability of the Ghost Cat card. Although the system has given corresponding instructions, the instructions given by the system are only one sentence. Absorb the souls of enemies you killed to strengthen yourself. In order to find out the extent of the enhancement of soul absorption, Roy plans to conduct a detailed test using the criminals in Hell's Kitchen. Without much effort, he used his water molecule perception to discover a group of thugs who were robbing people on the road. After sensing this group of thugs, he did not hesitate at all and immediately used the Ghost Cat's teleportation ability and disappeared on the roof of the building. After just one teleportation, he arrived at the street 2 kilometers away. The longer the distance, the more convenient it is. Roy sighed in his heart. Then, he walked towards the group of thugs who were robbing people on the road. Blood Angel? After seeing him, the thugs who were robbing were stunned for a moment. Not only did they show surprised expressions, but the blonde woman who was being robbed by them also showed a surprised expression. Run! When they found out that the person walking towards them was Roy, the 5 thugs turned around and ran without any hesitation. However, they stopped after running only a few steps. Freeze! Roy used his freezing superpowers to freeze them completely. He ignored the woman who was being robbed and walked straight past her. Soon, he came in front of the 5 thugs who were wrapped in ice. Roy first looked at them, then used his freezing superpower once again. Break down! Whether it was the ice or the gangsters inside it, they all decomposed into cold ice mist at a speed visible to the naked eye. When the ice mist completely dissipated in the air, Roy slowly began to perform soul absorption. As the soul absorption was performed, 5 green human-shaped lights appeared in his sight, struggling frantically. Although I have never seen this situation before, I know without thinking that these 5 green human-shaped lights are the souls of the 5 gangsters. Although they struggled with all their might, they still flew towards Roy uncontrollably. The closer they got to Roy, the smaller they became. Finally, it turned into 5 green spots of light and sank into Roy's body. Roy carefully sensed his situation and frowned slightly. After absorbing the souls of those 5 gangsters, his physical attributes were indeed strengthened. But the extent of the enhancement was much smaller than he had imagined. If expressed in percentage terms, the souls of these 5 gangsters gave him about 0.05% enhancement. According to this ratio, he needs to absorb the souls of 10,000 people to double the strength of his physical attributes. Teleport. Roy did not hesitate at all and decisively teleported away from the street. An hour later, in the Sky Building near New York's Central Park, Roy sat on the sofa and took a sip of the whiskey in front of him. Over the next hour, he used teleportation to various crime scenes and killed more than 100 thugs and gang members who were committing crimes. Just like the 5 thugs at the beginning, killing those thugs and gang members later also brought about 0.01% enhancement to each person. In other words, after being busy in Hell's Kitchen for an hour, he only gained about 1% enhancement in his physical attributes. Although the degree of enhancement was not high, he knew that it was not a problem of soul absorption, but his problem. New York has a population of over 800 million. If he was willing to abandon morality for the sake of power and carry out a large-scale massacre in New York, the population of New York alone would be enough to intensify his terror 100-fold. This is a very tempting enhancement. However, he did not intend to do so. As a human being, there must always be some bottom line. He has no interest in being a superhero, nor does he want to be a supervillain who massacres civilians. After drinking the whiskey in the glass, Roy stood up and walked towards Daisy's bedroom. Noon the next day. As usual, Roy enjoyed the lunch cooked by Daisy and Mary Jane. Neither Roy, Daisy, nor Mary Jane had any intention of hiring a live-in nanny. None of the 3 of them liked the idea of having a stranger living in their home. They will only hire a nanny to clean the house temporarily when necessary. After lunch, Roy was considering whether to go to Wakanda to see Abomination and Hulk when his cell phone rang. When he saw a completely unfamiliar caller number displayed on the phone screen, he frowned slightly. Although many people want to know his contact information, not many people have his phone number. He didn't think much about it and answered the call. "Which one?" Roy asked. "Hello Mr. Chen, I'm Matt Murdock." Matt Murdock? Roy didn't immediately recall that this was Daredevil's real name. It took him a few seconds to react. "Are you looking for me?" Roy said slowly. "You saved a blonde lady who was being robbed by thugs in Hell's Kitchen last night. Her name is Karen Page, and she's my secretary." Daredevil continued. "And then? You called me specially, it shouldn't be just to thank me. Don't waste everyone's time. Tell me, what do you want to do?" Although Daredevil is not a bad guy, Roy's impression of him is only average. "In that case, I'll tell you straight away. I know you opened a Hellfire detective agency. I would like to ask you to find someone who is very important to me," Daredevil said in a sincere tone. Roy didn't waste any brain cells thinking about it and asked directly, "Who do you want to find?" "Erica Natchez," Daredevil replied quickly. End of this chapter. Chapter 90 Scientific Research Talent, Banner and Number 039, S Choice. Chapter 90 Scientific Research Talent, Banner's Choice. Erica Natchez? After hearing that Daredevil wanted him to find Erica, Roy did not hesitate and immediately replied, "Not interested." After saying that, he hung up the phone without waiting for Daredevil to answer. His relationship with Daredevil isn't good enough for him to help the other find his ex-girlfriend. After hanging up the phone, Roy decisively used water molecule teleportation. The capital of Wakanda. It only took him a minute or 2 to get from New York to the capital of Wakanda. After coming over, he first went to see Hulk. Just as he guessed, Hulk did not return control of the body to Banner. It's a rare opportunity for Hulk to come out, so he won't go back so easily. At this time, Hulk was in a room in the palace, sitting on the floor, and the table in front of him was filled with various snacks and drinks. I don't know if it was his own request, but Hulk was now eating the snacks in front of him while watching a video of a boxing match. After seeing Roy, Hulk, who was sitting on the ground, immediately stood up and came to him with a silly smile on his face. Hulk loves this place. Hulk said to Roy. Nice. You love it. I have something to talk to Banner about. Ask him to come out. Roy said slowly. Compared to Banner, he likes Hulk more. But Banner also has abilities that the Hulk doesn't have. For example, scientific research. After hearing his words, Hulk didn't think too long and nodded immediately. Under Roy's gaze, Hulk's body began to shrink visibly. Soon, the big and strong Hulk disappeared. Instead, Banner had a vigilant look on his face, trying hard to hold up his pants to prevent himself from exposing himself completely. After taking a look at Banner, Roy took out a long windbreaker from the system space and threw it to Banner. I don't like talking to naked men. Roy said seriously. Although Banner has not been completely exposed yet, his current image is still a bit bad. Banner quickly put on the long windbreaker that Roy threw to him and said with a vigilant look, "What do you want to talk to me about? Be my subordinate." Roy didn't waste time talking to Banner and spoke directly. Although Banner is not as good as Tony, he is still a top physicist with 7 doctoral degrees and a rare scientific research talent. Roy now has a lot of subordinates, but only Norman can be considered a scientific research talent. Not only that, compared to Banner, Norman is undoubtedly a level lower. After hearing Roy's words, Banner showed an expression that said, as expected. Unlike Hulk, he knew who Roy was, and he also knew that his only advantage over Hulk was that he was much smarter than Hulk. Why should I promise you? You should know that Hulk and I are one. If I die, Hulk will die too, so it's useless even if you threaten me with your life. Banner asked Roy. Even though it was Hulk who controlled the body before, it doesn't mean he is unaware of what is happening outside. If his body was a car, then he and Hulk would be the people sitting in it. Whoever controls the body is the driver. As for the other, he was the passenger sitting in the passenger seat. You're right. Threatening you with my life is useless, so I won't threaten you with that. If you don't agree, I can make sure you'll never have the chance to control your body again. You should know clearly what this means without me telling you. If you agree, I will give you the protection you deserve and put an end to your days of fleeing. In addition, I can also provide you with all the resources and equipment you need to conduct the research you are interested in. Let's take the present moment for example. If you are interested in vibranium technology, I can give you access to all vibranium technology information. I'll give you a minute to think about it. Roy looked at Banner and spoke slowly. After that, he ignored Banner and sat down on the sofa, waiting patiently. Banner stood there, his brain working frantically, wondering whether he should agree to Roy. It didn't take long for him to make a decision. If I agree to your offer, can I arrange my leisure time freely? Banner came up to Roy and asked. Of course can. As long as you complete the tasks I ask you to do, you can do whatever you want at other times. Even if you want to go back to America and marry Betty Ross, I won't stop you. Not only that, if General Ross disagrees, I can help you convince him. Roy said slowly. As soon as he finished speaking, Banner's voice rang out. Okay, I agree to be your subordinate. What do you want me to do for you? Research the vibranium arm that Bronski needs. Banner asked immediately. No, Wakanda developed the technology for vibranium prosthetics a long time ago. I don't have any research or experiments for you to handle right now. I'll tell you when I have some. If I have to say anything, I need you to transform once a day and let Hulk out for a while. Everyone in prison has time to exercise. It's not fair to keep Hulk locked up all the time. You can discuss the specific time allocation yourselves. I only have one requirement, which is that Hulk's daily activity time cannot be less than 6 hours. Roy said to Banner. No problem. Banner replied immediately. He knew that Roy liked Hulk more, and he guessed that Roy would have such a request. Okay, there's nothing else to do for now. If you need anything else, you can go to the leader of the Stern Cross Knights, Alan or Norman. As long as it's not an excessive request, they will try their best to satisfy you. Roy said slowly. It is good. Banner nodded. After hearing Banner's reply, Roy said nothing more. He teleported out of the room and completely disappeared from Banner's sight. After meeting Hulk and Banner, he came to the Vibranium Research Institute originally run by Black Panther's sister Shuri. Here, he met Abomination, who had just installed a Vibranium right arm. At this time, Abomination was in the Research Institute, adapting to his newly installed Vibranium right arm. Although it was not his original arm, Abomination quickly adapted to the Vibranium right arm and fell in love with it. Compared to the original right arm, the Vibranium right arm is much stronger. Apart from anything else, the strength and defense of the Vibranium right arm alone far exceeds the original right arm. After briefly instructing Norman and Abomination, Roy used water molecules to teleport away from Wakanda and returned to his penthouse in Manhattan. Time flies. 3 months passed before I knew it. During these 3 months, Roy lived a life similar to before. Neither SHIELD, the military, nor any other official American agency came to trouble him. As time passed, his possession of Wakanda's capital and vibranium mines was tacitly accepted by the international community. It won't work if you don't default. Roy has proven with facts that he possesses the powerful strength to conquer a country alone. Study. Roy sat in the office chair behind the desk, patiently waiting for the normal card draw times to refresh. He has now accumulated 9 normal card draws. In another minute or two, he would have accumulated 10 normal card draws, allowing him to perform an advanced card draw and obtain the second SSR card. End of this chapter. Chapter 91, Controlling Magnetic Fields, second SSR card. Chapter 91, Manipulating Magnetic Fields, the second SSR card. Time passes little by little. When the time reached 12 noon, the system refreshed the number of ordinary card draws on time. Number of normal card draws, 10. Do you want to consume 10 ordinary card draws to exchange for 1 advanced card draw? Without any hesitation, Roy decisively chose yes. Advanced card draw times, 1. Do you want to start advanced card drawing immediately? Roy took a deep breath and chose to do the advanced card drawing immediately. The number of advanced card draws just obtained was instantly reset to 0. At the same time, a dazzling light appeared before his eyes that only he could see. When the light completely dissipated, a golden card appeared in his sight. After seeing the mutant shown on the front of the card, Roy couldn't suppress his satisfied smile. Obtain SSR Magneto card. Deck update. Deck, SSR Magneto, SSR Iceman, SR Card King, SR Fireman, SR Cyclops, R Angel, R Agent Zero, Fusion Wolverine, Fusion Ghost Cat. It's worthy of being called an advanced card draw. Roy sighed in his heart first, and then browsed the Magneto card description given by the system. Without any systematic introduction, he knew exactly what kind of superpowers Magneto possessed. Manipulate any form of magnetic field. The Magneto in the movies, especially the Magneto in the old trilogy of X-Men movies, displays superpowers that are more like manipulating metal rather than magnetic fields. It was not until the movie X-Men, Apocalypse that Magneto, after being strengthened by Apocalypse, demonstrated a small amount of his ability to manipulate the Earth's magnetic field. Even so, the Magneto in the movie is still far inferior to the Magneto in the comics. In the comics, Magneto has many highlight scenes of moving large planets. Not only that, his level of magnetic field manipulation has also extended to the atomic level, which can manipulate chemical structures and change matter. As for making himself and others float, generating powerful electromagnetic pulses, generating quantum-level electromagnetic energy, bending visible light to make himself invisible, creating wormholes to teleport himself and others, etc., it is not a difficult task for him. In addition, he can use electromagnetic force to strengthen his body, allowing his physical attributes such as strength and endurance to surpass human limits. For example, reducing your reaction time to 1/15 of a normal human's. He can also create a force field that isolates matter and energy, strong enough to withstand repeated nuclear bombardments and be immune to most damage. At certain times, he can also change the gravitational field, allowing his superpowers to change from manipulating the magnetic field to manipulating the unified field that unifies gravity and electromagnetic force. In the movie X-Men, The Last Stand, he was set as a 4th-level mutant. However, in the comics, he is an authentic Omega-level mutant. After reading the instructions given by the system, Roy found that the superpowers granted by the SSR Magneto card were closer to the Magneto in the comics than the Magneto in the movie. Cool. Roy contentedly closed the system panel that only he could see. If he obtained Iceman's superpowers, he would be able to walk sideways on the Earth. After obtaining Magneto's superpowers, he can even walk sideways in the universe. As long as he doesn't provoke the existence of death, eternity, infinity, and the life tribunal. Even if we look at the entire universe, he is now undoubtedly a high-level combat force. After turning off the system panel, Roy teleported out of the study, ready to celebrate with Daisy and Mary Jane. Washington, D.C. The director's office in the Triskelion building at SHIELD headquarters. Nick Fury, the fuck you who was reviewing the documents, suddenly had an indescribable sense of crisis. As an experienced spy, he did not doubt his instincts and immediately picked up the phone on the table and dialed an internal number. Where is Roy Chen now? Without waiting for the other party to speak, Nick Fury spoke immediately. It should still be in the mansion in Manhattan. The SHIELD agent on the other end of the line quickly replied. In intelligence agencies like SHIELD, there are some forbidden words when reporting to superiors, such as should, may, probably, perhaps, maybe, etc. Because using these words means that the accuracy of the intelligence cannot be guaranteed. In other words, this is not qualified intelligence. Although the SHIELD agent on the other end of the phone used the word should to represent uncertain intelligence, Nick Fury did not condemn the other party and continued, "Send me Roy Chen's latest whereabouts and investigation report." If he was asking about other people's whereabouts, he would definitely not allow the other party to use vague words. But what he was asking about now was Roy's whereabouts. It is very difficult to figure out where Roy, who has the superpower of teleportation, is. It's good enough to know roughly where Roy is now. After saying that, Nick Fury hung up the phone without waiting for the other party to answer. After hanging up the phone, he frowned and thought for more than 10 seconds. Then, another call was made. Notify Agent Romanoff, Agent Hill, Agent Barbara, and Agent Carter, and have them come to the director's office as soon as possible. Nick Fury said slowly. If possible, he didn't really want to call Black Widow and the others to his office. As for why, the reason is simple. Because Black Widow and the others now have a lot of opinions about him. The people he sent to monitor and track Black Widow and her group were easily discovered by them. Although he is the director of SHIELD and has the power to send people to monitor them, he also has sufficient reasons to do so. But no matter from which angle you look at it, his arrangement means one thing, that is, he does not trust Black Widow and the others. Not long after, Black Widow and the others arrived at the director's office. Just as Nick Fury guessed, Black Widow and the others didn't treat him well. "Please sit down. Would you like something to drink? I have some nice whiskey and champagne." Nick Fury sighed in his heart and said to Black Widow and the other three. "No need, just tell me, what do you want from us? Black Widow replied coldly. Agent Hill and the other two did not say anything, but just looked at him with the same cold expression. I was wrong. I shouldn't have suspected you of betraying SHIELD, and I shouldn't have sent people to follow and monitor you. I now solemnly apologize to you. Sorry. Nick Fury stood up and bowed sincerely to Black Widow and the other three. Although he acted very sincere, Black Widow and the others were not rookies and knew that he didn't really think he had done anything wrong, but was only apologizing to them out of helplessness. As for why Nick Fury apologized to them at this time, the reason is not difficult to guess. Roy. In the past 3 months, S.H.I.E.L.D. and the military have indeed not caused any trouble for Roy. But they knew that S.H.I.E.L.D. and the military regarded Roy as the #1 threat. If you want to get the latest information about Roy from us, you can give up now. The last time he contacted us was a month ago. Agent Hill said to Nick Fury. Compared with the 3 Black Widows, she was once the one who trusted Nick Fury the most. When Nick Fury asked her to use her honey to seduce Roy, she didn't think much about it and agreed immediately. Otherwise, given her position and agent level in SHIELD, she could choose to refuse even Nick Fury's order. It was also because of this that the fact that Nick Fury sent people to follow and monitor her completely destroyed her trust in Nick Fury. End of this chapter. Chapter 92, Nick Fury and number 039's plan to assassinate Roy. Chapter 92, Nick Fury's plan to assassinate Roy. Nick Fury looked at Agent Hill, Black Widow, and others with embarrassment, and said slowly, I didn't call you up here to ask you about Roy's situation. I just want to ask if you have any other needs recently, such as applying for a vacation to relax. Although his real purpose was to ask Black Widow and the others about Roy's situation. But judging from the current situation, even if Black Widow and the others knew what Roy had done recently, they would not leak Roy's information to him. If we need to apply for leave, we will do it ourselves. There is no need to trouble Director Fury to ask about it personally. Is there anything else? If not, we have work to do. Black Widow looked at Nick Fury with a cold expression. No more, go and do your work. Nick Fury said slowly. As soon as he finished speaking, the 4 Black Widows left the office without looking back and disappeared from his sight. After watching Black Widow and the others leave, Nick Fury sighed helplessly. He thought Black Widow and the others could understand his difficulties. It turns out that he thought too much. It's all Roy's fault. Without him, none of this would have happened. After cursing Roy in his heart, Nick Fury operated the computer in front of him and opened a highly confidential file. As the file was opened, a photo of a middle-aged man with long hair and related information immediately appeared on the screen. Although the middle-aged man in the photo has messy long hair, if Roy or Captain America were present, they would recognize at a glance that the person in the photo is Bucky. Name: Bucky Barnes. Codename: Winter Soldier. Startup password: Desire, Rust, 17, Dawn, Stove, 9, Kindness, Home, 1, Truck. Russian version. Action record: 127. Failure record: none. Note: after being released from cryogenic freezing, the target will gradually recover its pre-transformation memory and will need to undergo electric shock brainwashing again to erase the memory. After browsing Bucky's information, Nick Fury began to consider whether to send Bucky to carry out the mission of assassinating Roy. Half a year ago, not long after Roy killed Alexander Pierce, S.H.I.E.L.D. followed the clues and discovered several Hydra bases located in Great Britain. Inside one of the Hydra bases, S.H.I.E.L.D. agents found Bucky frozen in cryogenic conditions. After discovering Bucky, the team commander contacted Nick Fury immediately. After confirming that the cryogenically frozen Bucky was Captain America Roger's good friend, Nick Fury, as the director, issued a gag order, strictly prohibiting the S.H.I.E.L.D. agents present from leaking any information about Bucky. Under his arrangement, the sleeping Bucky was secretly sent back to a base in Washington, D.C. At the beginning, Nick Fury also thought about telling Captain America Rogers that Bucky was still alive. After all, Captain America is now his most capable subordinate. But after thinking it over carefully, he gave up the idea. The only benefit of telling Captain America that Bucky is still alive is getting his gratitude. There are obviously more benefits to hiding Bucky's existence and using him as a secret weapon. More importantly, Bucky, who was transformed into the Winter Soldier by Hydra, can be used to check and balance Captain America. Although Captain America is now the face and trump card of SHIELD, Nick Fury still cannot fully trust Captain America. To be precise, no matter who the other party is, he will not completely trust the other party. After thinking carefully for a few minutes, Nick Fury finally made a decision. Send Bucky to assassinate Roy. If we only look at strength, not to mention one Bucky, even 100 Buggies would not be a match for Roy. But Nick Fury decided to do it anyway. As for why, the reason is simple. Because even if Bucky fails, it won't implicate S.H.I.E.L.D. unless Roy knows that Bucky was sent by him. Otherwise, Roy would just think that Bucky was sent by the remnants of Hydra. In addition, there is another reason why Nick Fury made such a decision. That is, he wanted to use Bucky to test Roy and see if Roy was really so hard-hearted that he would not accept any form of threat. After seeing Roy transform into a hundreds-meter-tall ice giant near the capital of Wakanda, Nick Fury knew that conventional means could no longer defeat Roy. Since conventional means are useless, we can only resort to unconventional means. For example, using the people around Roy to threaten him. On the surface, this would only anger Roy. After all, Hydra had already tried it with Roy's parents. But Nick Fury sees it differently. His instinct told him that Roy was not invincible. Hydra failed simply because it used the wrong method. Having made his decision, Nick Fury first closed Bucky's file, then picked up the phone and dialed an internal number. Prepare a Quinjet for me. No need to arrange a pilot. I will fly it myself. After saying that, Nick Fury hung up the phone without waiting for the other party to answer. Manhattan, New York. The penthouse in the Sky Building. At this time, Roy didn't know that Nick Fury was going to send the Winter Soldier to assassinate him. Currently, he was playing a thrilling and exciting three-person game of Landlord with Daisy and Mary Jane in the bedroom. Although he was fighting 1 against 2, he won the final victory without any suspense. After Daisy and Mary Jane began to beg for mercy and admit defeat, he did not continue to bully them and decisively ended the game. Night. Roy teleported Mary Jane to a Broadway theater. He did not stay to enjoy Mary Jane's performance and soon left the theater. After performing teleportation several times in a row, he arrived at an uninhabited forest in the suburbs of New York. He planned to further experience the superpower of controlling magnetic fields here. He had already used this superpower when playing cards with Daisy and Mary Jane. He used the principle of electromagnetic levitation to go on a unique anti-gravity card-playing journey with them. I have to say, this is a very satisfying and novel experience. Although Magneto's superpower is to control magnetic fields, from another perspective, Magneto is no different from someone who has mastered the electromagnetic force, one of the 4 fundamental forces in the universe. After the game was over, many new abilities related to electromagnetic force emerged in Roy's mind. For example, a certain railgun. The lightning dancing between your fingers is my unchanging faith in this life. Although he had long passed the age of Chayunibun, he couldn't help but recall this sentence when the new ability a certain scientific railgun popped up in his mind. After teleporting to the forest, Roy did not immediately develop new abilities such as the railgun, but instead used the abilities that Magneto in the comics had already developed. Changing magnetic field, electromagnetic levitation, electromagnetic pulse, optical invisibility, electromagnetic enhancement, electromagnetic force field. The penthouse in the Sky Building. When Roy and Mary Jane went out, Daisy, who was left alone at home, was not idle either. She went to the living room with her laptop and started her hacker entertainment activities. Just as she was happily hacking into the S.H.I.E.L.D. database, the doorbell suddenly rang. End of this chapter. Chapter 93, Shocking Bounty, Roy and Number 039, S Weakness. Chapter 93, Shocking Bounty, Roy's Weakness. When Daisy heard the doorbell, she first looked puzzled. Then, he immediately used the computer to connect to the surveillance doorbell at the door. Soon, she saw a completely strange man. The other person was wearing a FedEx work uniform and a matching work hat, holding a cardboard box in his hand, and standing at the door with a calm face. Although she didn't know the other person, after seeing the other person's outfit, she didn't think much about it and stood up and walked towards the door. Since moving in here, she has been receiving many express deliveries for Mary Jane. Soon, she arrived at the front door and opened it. "Hello, are you Miss Watson?" the courier asked Daisy. "No, she is my roommate," Daisy replied. "Roommate?" After hearing Daisy's answer, the courier showed a puzzled expression. Although it was a bit strange, the courier did not ask any more questions and continued, "Is Miss Watson home? This is her package." "She's not at home, I'll just sign for her," Daisy said slowly. "Okay, please." After saying that, the courier handed the box to Daisy. "Shouldn't I sign for it first?" Daisy frowned slightly and instinctively took the box handed to her by the courier. Just as she was about to say something else, the courier, who had a kind face just now, suddenly changed his expression, opened the box, and said in a cold tone, "This is a gift from Hydra to Roy Chen." The courier in front of Daisy was none other than Bucky, the Winter Soldier who had just woken up this afternoon. As the cardboard box was opened, the time bomb inside was activated. Although Daisy is not a bomb disposal expert, she can tell at a glance that the bomb in the cardboard box is not simple. Not to mention the complicated circuits and the countdown screen in the middle. There are also specially designed leveling devices around the bomb. "You have 10 minutes. After saying that, Bucky picked up the handcuffs connected to the bomb and handcuffed Daisy's hands. After doing all this, he didn't do anything else and walked towards the elevator without looking back. Looking at the bomb in front of her, Daisy did not panic or get scared like an ordinary woman. She returned to the living room with the bomb in her hands with a calm face and carefully placed it on the table. This seemingly simple action took her 3 or 4 minutes to complete. After placing the bomb steadily on the table, she picked up the mobile phone on the table and dialed Roy's number. Soon, the call was connected. "What happened?" Roy's voice rang out immediately. "A Hydra man disguised himself as a courier and sent a time bomb over here," Daisy replied without any hesitation. "Hydra? Time bomb?" After hearing what Daisy said, Roy quickly said, "I'll be right back." "Yeah, I'll wait for you," Daisy replied. After hanging up the phone, Roy immediately used teleportation. In a few seconds, he returned to the living room of his residence from the uninhabited forest in the suburbs and saw Daisy sitting on the floor and the time bomb on the coffee table. After seeing him come back, Daisy looked at him tenderly and said slowly, "Did I perform well?" "Well, very good." Roy came to Daisy, nodded, released his adamantium claws, and cut off the handcuffs in Daisy's hands. Then, he put the time bomb on the table into the system space. "What does the person who sent the bomb look like?" Roy asked Daisy. Daisy took the computer on the table and called up the surveillance footage of the doorbell. "Is it him?" When Roy saw that the person in the surveillance video was Bucky, he immediately frowned. In the process of dealing with Hydra, he never found any trace of Bucky, so he guessed that Bucky had died early and did not become Hydra's Winter Soldier as in the movie. As it turns out, he was wrong. "I'm going to the theater and will be back soon," Roy said to Daisy. Daisy knew he was going to the theater to make sure Mary Jane was safe, so she nodded immediately. Under her gaze, Roy disappeared in an instant. In just a second or two, Roy arrived at the Broadway Theater from the Sky Building. Mary Jane was wearing gorgeous costumes and performing passionately on the stage. Although Mary Jane was fine, Roy did not leave immediately. Instead, he calmly used his water molecule perception. After confirming that there were no suspicious people within a few kilometers of the theater, he took out his cell phone and called Alan, the leader of the Stern Cross Knights. After the call was connected, he didn't wait for Alan to speak, and said directly, "Let the Knights of New York come to the theater to protect Mary Jane." Although he didn't know what happened, Alan didn't hesitate and immediately replied, "Yes, sir." After giving Alan the order, he once again used teleportation and returned from the theater to the Sky Building. "Is she okay?" Daisy asked Roy. "Fine. Post a bounty on the Blood Angels website you created and on the dark web. Provide the exact whereabouts of this person, and 10 kilograms of vibranium. Bring his head to me and 50 kilograms of vibranium. Capture him alive, 100 kilograms of vibranium. If you can add the mastermind behind him, the reward will be doubled. After issuing the reward, send the content of the reward and his photo to major media outlets in America." Roy was too lazy to guess whether Bucky was sent by the remnants of Hydra led by Alexander Pierce, so he decided to directly offer a reward for Bucky and the mastermind behind the scenes. On the surface, the reward he offered was not much. Even if the Winter Soldier and the mastermind were captured alive, there would only be 200 kilograms of vibranium. But in fact, this reward is already amazing. After vibranium became widely known, its price reached an astonishing level. Now, the price of 1 gram of vibranium on the black market is as high as $10,000. In other words, 200 kilograms of vibranium is equivalent to $2 billion. It is good. Daisy didn't ask why Roy offered a reward in vibranium, and replied immediately. Soon, major media outlets in the United States received the photos and reward information sent by Daisy. When the heads of major media outlets first received Daisy's email, they thought it was some kind of prank. However, after seeing the same bounty appear on Roy's Blood Angel website and the dark web, they knew it was not a prank but real. It wasn't long before an urgent news item was inserted into major news channels and websites. SHIELD headquarters. The director's office in the Trident building. Nick Fury sat on the sofa in the reception area, watching the urgent news broadcast on major news channels with a satisfied look on his face. Although he didn't expect Roy to offer a high reward to find Bucky, Roy's reaction confirmed one thing for him, that is, Roy was not as hard-hearted as people thought. "Very good. Found your weakness." Nick Fury sighed as he picked up the glass in front of him and drank the whiskey in it. "P.S. I went out to repair my car today and will be back in the evening." End of this chapter. Chapter 94 Black People Think and God Laughs. Chapter 94 When Black People Think, God Laughs. Putting down his glass, Nick Fury took out his cell phone and dialed a number. Soon, the call was connected. "Refreeze the Winter Soldier and transfer him to Site 27 in New York." Without waiting for the other party to speak, Nick Fury spoke quickly. "Yes, sir." The S.H.I.E.L.D. agent on the other end of the line quickly replied. After giving the order, Nick Fury hung up the phone, sat down behind the desk, and retrieved a highly confidential file from the database. He first entered a long password. Subsequently, the fingerprint and pupil verification was completed using the fingerprint and pupil authenticator on the table. After doing all this, the file in front of him was opened, revealing its contents. The highly confidential document he opened was none other than S.H.I.E.L.D's complete analysis report on Roy. In addition to Roy's personal information, superpower analysis, psychological analysis, and daily records, the attachments to the file also contain several capture and elimination plans tailored for Roy. These include the Angel Hunter plan modified from the Insight plan, and the Top Threat plan jointly implemented by SHIELD and the military. Nick Fury didn't browse the other contents and went straight to Roy's psychological analysis report. The target has a domineering personality, does whatever he wants in life, and has obvious anarchist tendencies and racist tendencies against black people. He received a typical traditional education at the University of Tokyo when he was young. Before his superpowers awakened, he was reserved, introverted, modest, restrained, and had no religious beliefs. After awakening his superpowers, his personality changed drastically. He became overbearing, flamboyant, arrogant, insolent, and cynical. In the case of the kidnapping of parents, the target showed a ruthlessness and coldness that violated the traditional filial piety of the University of Tokyo, and it is suspected that he was influenced by Western parent-child relationships. Wakanda Capitol Incident. The target showed personality traits such as ambition, dictatorship, and tyranny. The target has a small social circle, lives a relatively closed life, focuses on personal enjoyment, and is greedy for beauty. The target is relatively indifferent to family and friendship. It is recommended to focus on the target's love and partner, and try to win him over, test him, and flatter him. Avoid direct conflict with your target unless necessary. After reading Roy's psychological analysis report, Nick Fury became more and more certain that he had found Roy's weakness. In his opinion, Roy's high-profile bounty on Bucky just proved that the women around him were his weak spot. Nick Fury came to this conclusion mainly because he felt that Roy's reaction this time was a bit too great. Even though his parents were killed by Hydra, Roy did not use the method of offering a bounty to find the whereabouts of Hydra. Instead, he personally gathered intelligence about Hydra and slowly destroyed the Hydra base. However, now that Daisy is not dead yet, he immediately issued an astonishing bounty, as if he wanted to kill Bucky immediately. Nick Fury wasn't surprised at all that Roy would take revenge. In other words, it would be unreasonable if Roy acted as if nothing had happened. Bucky just sent the time bomb over and didn't hurt Daisy immediately. It was specially arranged by Nick Fury. He made such an arrangement because he wanted to see whether the inference in the psychological analysis report that Roy cared more about his partner was correct. After seeing major media outlets broadcast Roy's reward in the form of urgent news, he came to a conclusion. Roy cares more about his partner than his parents. Nick Fury would come to that conclusion, and from his perspective, there's nothing wrong with that. Unfortunately, however, this conclusion is wrong. Judging from Roy's current reaction, he does care more about his partner. It was true that Daisy was his partner. But the problem is that the parents Daisy is compared to are not his real parents. He is a time traveler who occupied the original body. Although he inherited the memories of his original body, it does not mean that he will regard his original body's parents as his biological parents. After crossing over to this world, he has never really had any contact with his original parents. The only time he saw his original parents was after they were kidnapped by Hydra. In this case, if he had deep feelings for his original parents, that would be really wrong. On one side are the parents who only exist in the original body's memory and have only been seen once through live video. On the other side is Daisy, who lives with him day and night. You can tell which is more important without even thinking about it. If Roy knew that Nick Fury came to the conclusion that Bucky valued his partner more than his parents because he put a bounty on Bucky with vibranium, and felt that he had found his weakness, he would only say a few words to Nick Fury. The first sentence is, "Idiot." The second sentence is, "When black people think, God laughs." Without clarifying the premise, he jumped to the conclusion. At this time, Nick Fury did not know that his conclusion was wrong. He looked at the report on the computer screen with satisfaction and thought about his next plan. When major media and news websites reported the bounty issued by Roy as urgent news, both the people who liked him and the people who disliked him showed strong interest in the reward. Although they didn't know who the person in the photo was, nor did they know why Roy offered a reward for him, they knew that the reward Roy offered this time was very generous. As long as you provide accurate whereabouts, you can get vibranium worth $1 million. Such a high reward can interest 99% of people in America. That's $1 million, $1 million that can turn a pauper into a billionaire instantly. Not only that, killing Bucky and capturing him alive can get you higher rewards of $5 million and $10 billion respectively. If behind-the-scenes hosting is included, these remunerations can be doubled. This means that the maximum compensation that can be obtained is $20 billion. Ordinary Americans would not be interested in this level of compensation. Even the agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. have a keen interest. New York. S.H.I.E.L.D. Base 27. 3 S.H.I.E.L.D. agents wearing black combat uniforms came to the laboratory inside the base and looked at Bucky lying in the frozen container with complicated expressions. After looking at each other, one of the agents quickly came to the operating table and began the thawing procedure. The remaining 2 people pulled out the tranquilizer guns from their waists. As soon as the thawing process is completed and the hatch of the freezing container is opened, they will fire anesthetic bullets at Bucky, who has just awakened. After seeing the bounty Roy posted, they discussed it for less than a minute before unanimously deciding to hand over the living Bucky to Roy. Although doing so means betraying S.H.I.E.L.D., facing the temptation of $10 billion, betraying S.H.I.E.L.D. is no big deal. Their annual salary is more than $30. Even if the annual salary of the 3 of them is added together, it is only $100 million a year. In other words, the 3 of them would have to work at S.H.I.E.L.D. for 1,000 years without eating or drinking to save up $10 billion. Before the thawing process was completed, the door of the laboratory was opened and a team of fully armed S.H.I.E.L.D. agents entered the laboratory. Henry, Hank, Bell, put down your weapons. Buck, the team leader, said immediately. After hearing his words, Henry at the operating table pointed to the frozen container in the middle of the laboratory and said, "As long as you bring the guy inside to the Blood Angels, you can get $10 billion. Even if we split it equally, everyone will get $1 million." As he spoke, Henry's right hand grasped the pistol at his waist. "I'm saying this for the last time, put your weapons down." Buck replied without changing his expression. As soon as he finished speaking, the 2 S.H.I.E.L.D. agents behind him turned their guns and aimed at his head. "Captain, don't stop our brothers from making money." One of the S.H.I.E.L.D. agents spoke up. End of this chapter. Chapter 95, Bucky is sent to the door, and Captain America is angry. Chapter 95, Bucky is sent to the door, and Captain America is angry. Manhattan, New York. The penthouse in the Sky Building. Roy sat on the sofa in the living room, watching the news on TV calmly. Daisy sat next to him, browsing the messages on the Blood Angels website. After reporting the reward issued by Roy in the form of an urgent news insert, almost all news channels conducted more in-depth special reports. For example, ask experts to analyze whether such a bounty is legal, whether the rewards obtained from the bounty need to be taxed, whether the people need to bear corresponding legal responsibilities after killing Bucky and the mastermind behind the scenes in accordance with the bounty requirements, etc. In addition, many media outlets focused their reports on Bucky. For example, who is Bucky, what exactly did he do, where is he now, etc. Although these media are not professional intelligence agencies like S.H.I.E.L.D., they quickly determined Bucky's identity. Bucky Barnes. A close friend of Captain America, he assisted Captain America in destroying a large number of Hydra bases during World War II and died in a mission. Because there was no more detailed information, these media had to introduce Bucky's information in the Captain America Museum when reporting on Bucky. Their limit was to confirm in a short period of time that the person Roy wanted to reward was Bucky. As for more detailed information, it was not something they could find out. They are just staff of news channels, not spies of intelligence agencies. Washington, D.C., S.H.I.E.L.D. Headquarters. The director's office in the Trident Building. The door of the office was roughly pushed open, and Captain America Rogers, in casual clothes, came in front of Nick Fury with an angry face. Roy is offering a bounty on Bucky, and all the news right now is reporting on his bounty and Bucky's situation. Captain America Rogers suppressed his anger and said to Nick Fury. I know. I watched the news. Nick Fury answered slowly. Aren't you going to do anything? Why does he offer a bounty on Bucky? He'll just make everyone attack Bucky if he does that. Captain America slammed his hands on the table and spoke quickly. I don't know why he's offering a bounty on Bucky. I have already given orders to the New York branch to try to find Bucky. Once they find Bucky, they'll take him back to headquarters. Although it was Bucky's own arrangement to deliver the bomb, Nick Fury would not tell Captain America about it. Not only that, unless Captain America discovers Bucky himself. Otherwise, he would never let Captain America and Bucky meet. I will personally lead the team to New York. I will ask Roy to cancel the bounty on Bucky. Captain America looked at Nick Fury seriously. I understand why you're so excited, but I don't recommend you go see Roy right now. You know exactly what your relationship with him is without me having to tell you. If you go there now, it will only make things more and more troublesome. After saying that, Nick Fury stood up and walked to the wine cabinet, took out 2 glasses, and poured a glass of whiskey for himself and Captain America respectively. Then, he returned to Captain America with the wine glasses and handed one of them to him. Captain America took the whiskey handed to him by Nick Fury but did not drink it. He looked at Nick Fury with a vigilant look and said slowly, You always knew that Bucky was still alive. No, I do not know. I only found out after watching the news. Nick Fury said without changing his expression. After looking at Nick Fury for a few times, Captain America drank the whiskey in the glass and continued, I will go to see Roy in a private capacity. You just need to arrange a Quinjet for me. Even if you went there, you wouldn't be able to convince him to withdraw the reward. You should know very well what kind of person he is. Of course, if you insist on going over, I won't stop you. Nick Fury picked up the wine glass, took a sip, and spoke slowly. When all major news channels began reporting Bucky's identity, he guessed that Captain America would definitely come to find him. Not only that, he also guessed that he couldn't stop Captain America from going to New York. Even if he didn't arrange a Quinjet for Captain America would find other ways to go to New York. No matter what Bucky did, I won't let anyone hurt him. He is my most important friend. Without him, I wouldn't be who I am today. After that, Captain America left the office without any hesitation. A few minutes later, a Quinjet flew out of the hangar and flew towards New York. New York. The laboratory at SHIELD Base 27. After a fierce gun battle, only 3 SHIELD agents were left alive in the laboratory. Henry and Hank, hiding behind the frozen container, looked at each other first. Then, the 2 of them stood up at the same time and walked towards Captain Buck, who was sitting against the wall at the door of the laboratory. Although Buck was still alive and had a pistol in his hand, he could no longer threaten Henry and Hank. Having been shot several times, he is now holding on purely by willpower. As for the pistol in his hand, the magazine was empty. After seeing Henry and Hank walking towards him, Buck's eyes fell on a rifle more than 1 meter away. Under normal circumstances, he could easily pick up the rifle. But now, apart from turning his head to look at the rifle, he didn't even have the strength to raise his hands. Soon, Henry and Hank came to him. Captain, is this the result you want to see? Originally, all of you brothers could have become billionaires and lived the rest of your lives in comfort. Well now, they are all dead, and you will die soon too. Henry said to Buck. Hearing his words, Buck endured the pain, looked at the 2 of them with disdain, and said slowly, even if you get the reward from the Blood Angels, you won't be able to spend it. The Bureau won't let you go, and Captain Rogers won't let you go either. I'll wait in hell for you 2 idiots to come down and keep me company. Boom! Without any hesitation, Henry pulled the trigger decisively, shot Buck in the head, and said to Buck's body. Just wait in hell. We will enjoy being billionaires in the human world. However, before he could finish his words, gunshots rang out again. Boom! Hank, who was standing behind Henry, shot him in the back of the head. Henry never imagined that Hank, who was like a brother to him and shared life and death with him, would shoot him in the back. Thump! Henry's body fell heavily to the ground with a dull sound. You should go down and accompany him. I am enough for you to stay in the world and enjoy yourself. Looking at Henry's body, Hank said slowly. A few minutes later, a Chevrolet SUV with the SHIELD logo on its body drove away from Base 27 and headed towards the Sky Building in Manhattan. In less than half an hour, Hank arrived at Roy's residence. Hank stood in front of Roy with a respectful look on his face. Next to him, there was a black body bag. Without any hesitation, Hank said to Roy. Good evening, Mr. Chen. I have brought the person you wanted. Open it and show it to me. Roy said slowly. Okay, Mr. Chen. After saying that, Henry squatted down and opened the black body bag beside him. As the zipper was unzipped, the unconscious Bucky appeared in the sight of Roy and Daisy. Thanks a lot. Roy nodded with satisfaction. Mr. Chen, you are too polite. Hank looked at Roy with a flattering expression and replied quickly. As he watched, Roy raised his right hand and snapped his fingers. With the sound of snapping fingers, a silver-white box appeared out of thin air in front of Hank. The vibranium inside is yours. Roy said calmly. Hank opened the box immediately. After seeing the vibranium in the box, an expression of uncontrollable satisfaction appeared on his face, and he quickly said. Thank you, Mr. Chen. End of this chapter. Chapter 96, Public Execution. Chapter 96, Public Execution. After thanking Roy, Hank immediately picked up the silver-white box and left with a smile on his face. Although the box weighs more than 100 kilograms, Hank doesn't feel it is heavy at all. As long as he thought that the vibranium in the box would allow him to live the rest of his life comfortably, he would have endless energy. He can't lift 100 kilograms of bricks, but he can walk with alacrity with 100 kilograms of vibranium. When Hank left, Daisy asked Roy, what are you going to do with him? Kill him directly. We have to kill him, but not here. First cancel the bounty on the website and the dark web. Roy said slowly. He guessed that someone would bring Bucky to him. But he didn't expect that the person who brought Bucky to him would be an agent of SHIELD. In addition, he did not expect that it was Nick Fury who arranged for Bucky to send the bomb. After bringing Bucky over, Hank first introduced his identity and then told him everything he knew. For example, SHIELD found Bucky in the Hydra base half a year ago, Bucky was just thawed today, and Bucky's actions tonight were arranged by Nick Fury, etc. Hank told Roy all these things, of course not to please him, but to get 10 more kilograms of vibranium. Nick Fury is the mastermind behind this, so his whereabouts are also worth 10 kilograms of vibranium. Although Hank didn't say it explicitly, Roy knew what he was thinking and fulfilled his wish. After hearing what Roy said, Daisy immediately started working on the computer and cancelled the bounty on the Blood Angel website and the dark web. Then he continued to ask, what's next? The next step is of course to find the mastermind behind this. I thought he would learn his lesson and stop messing with me. Now it seems that I overestimated him. As he spoke, Roy came in front of Bucky and used his freezing superpower on him, freezing him completely. Although Bucky is still unconscious, who knows when he will wake up. To be on the safe side, it's better to freeze him. Water molecules teleport. After completely freezing Bucky, Roy did not hesitate at all and immediately used water molecule teleportation to disappear from Daisy's sight. Washington, D.C. The director's office at SHIELD headquarters. Nick Fury stood in front of the huge floor-to-ceiling window in his office, holding a wine glass and frowning. For some reason, he had an indescribable bad feeling since just now, and always felt that something big was going to happen next. Could it be that Roy has already found Bucky? Impossible. Even if he announced a high reward with great fanfare, he wouldn't be able to find Bucky so quickly. If it wasn't Bucky, then could it be that something happened to Rogers? Nick Fury's brain was working frantically, and one guess after another flashed through his mind. After thinking for several minutes, he drank the whiskey in the glass and walked towards the desk. However, after taking a few steps, he stopped and turned around abruptly. When he turned around, he saw the person he least wanted to see right now. Roy. After seeing the cold expression on Roy's face, Nick Fury finally knew why he had a bad feeling. Although he was panicking inside, he did not show it. He pretended to be completely ignorant and said to Roy, "You came here to ask Shield to help you find." Before Nick Fury finished speaking, Roy's eyes flashed red. Impact beam. Without any hesitation, Roy decisively released a laser-like impact beam. Call out. The ruby-red impact beam instantly arrived in front of Nick Fury and shot off his right leg. Plop. Nick Fury immediately fell to the ground uncontrollably. "I'm curious, who gave you the courage to send Bucky to deliver a bomb to my house?" Looking at Nick Fury, who fell to the ground, Roy said slowly. "I didn't send him." Nick Fury endured the pain and replied immediately. "New York Base 27. Roy continued. Nick Fury struggled to sit up and said slowly, "I didn't expect you to find him so quickly. It seems that I underestimated your intelligence network. Since you already know that I sent him, I have nothing more to say. Do it." When Nick Fury heard Roy mention Base 27 in New York, he knew he would not survive the night. No matter how much he begged for mercy, Roy would not let him go. In that case, there is no need to ask for mercy. "I didn't find him. Your men brought him to me." As soon as he finished speaking, Roy fired the shock beam again, breaking Nick Fury's right arm. Nick Fury ignored the pain from his broken right arm and looked at Roy in surprise. He thought it was Roy who found New York Base 27. Unexpectedly, it was the SHIELD agents in Base 27 who brought Bucky to Roy. Just as Nick Fury was about to say something else, Roy fired 2 more blast beams, breaking his left arm and left leg. After using a blast beam to turn Nick Fury into a human stick, Roy used his freezing superpowers to freeze the wounds on Nick Fury's body to prevent him from dying from excessive bleeding. He then created a crystalline ice chain and used it to tie up Nick Fury. After doing all this, he used the teleportation granted by the Ghost Cat card and left the office with Nick Fury. Washington, D.C. is more than 360 kilometers away from New York. For ordinary people, this is not a short distance. But for Roy, this distance is nothing. Even though he was not performing water molecule teleportation, it took him less than 2 minutes to return from the Triskelion building in Washington, D.C. to the Sky building in Manhattan. "Inform all major media outlets in New York that I will deal with Bucky and Nick Fury, the mastermind behind this, in Times Square." After returning to his residence, Roy said to Daisy, who was sitting on the sofa in the living room. Daisy first looked at Nick Fury, who had lost his limbs, and then nodded. Soon, she sent the information that Roy was going to deal with Bucky and Nick Fury in Times Square to major media in New York. After Daisy sent the message, Roy picked up the frozen Bucky with one hand and performed teleportation again. In just a blink of an eye, he brought Nick Fury and Bucky to Times Square. Their arrival immediately attracted the attention of passers-by around them. Without any hesitation, the pedestrians around took out their cell phones and pointed them at Roy and the other two. Roy didn't care about the passers-by filming. He just thought about it and used the Iceman's superpowers to create an execution platform made entirely of ice in the open space of Times Square. Although he could have killed Nick Fury and Bucky outright, he didn't intend to do so. He was going to execute Nick Fury and Bucky in public, in front of the world. End of this chapter. Chapter 97 Cruel Roy. Chapter 97 Cruel Roy. When the execution platform made of ice took shape, Roy threw Nick Fury and Bucky onto the platform as if he was throwing away garbage. The next second, he teleported away from Times Square. When he left, passers-by around him quickly came to the front of the execution platform and started taking pictures of Nick Fury and Bucky frantically. Looking at the pedestrians in front of the execution platform, Nick Fury's expression was as ugly as it could be. At this moment, he felt like a chimpanzee being visited by tourists in the zoo, and he felt a strong sense of humiliation in his heart. Not only that, when he saw that the passers-by were just taking pictures of him and Bucky crazily and had no intention of going forward to help them, he knew that Roy had left an impression on ordinary people that he must not be disobeyed. Even though Roy had left now, these pedestrians did not dare to go up to the execution platform, let alone help them. After more than 10 seconds, a voice suddenly rang out from the crowd. He seems to be the director of SHIELD. It's not like, he is Nick Fury, the director of SHIELD. Why did the Blood Angels capture him as well? Is there any need to ask? He must have provoked the Blood Angels. What did he do? I don't know, but it's definitely not a good thing, otherwise the Blood Angels wouldn't have broken his limbs and brought him here. Passers-by in front of the execution platform were talking about the incident and uploading the photos and videos they took to the internet. Not long after, police cars patrolling nearby arrived at Times Square. The New York police who arrived did not rescue Nick Fury and Bucky on the execution platform, but began to evacuate the surrounding pedestrians and keep them away from the execution platform. Before arriving at Times Square, they learned from the police radio that the ICE execution platform in Times Square was built by Roy. Although they didn't know why Roy did this, they were very sure of one thing, that is, they must not save Nick Fury and Bucky on the execution platform. I only make a few $1,000s a month, there's no need to offend Roy for this little money. Time passes little by little. Not long after, reporters and photographers from major New York media also arrived at the scene. Also rushing to the scene with them were SHIELD agents from the New York branch. Unlike the New York police who had no intention of rescuing Nick Fury. After seeing Nick Fury, who had lost his limbs, lying on the execution platform, the SHIELD agents who rushed to the scene immediately walked towards the execution platform. Although they don't know what Nick Fury did, they know that Nick Fury is the director of SHIELD. Just as these SHIELD agents were about to step onto the execution platform, Nick Fury's voice rang out. "Don't come up, return to the New York branch immediately, this is an order." Nick Fury yelled. He knew that he would definitely not survive today, but he didn't want more SHIELD agents to die at Roy's hands because of him. As the director of SHIELD, this is the only thing he can do now. Hearing Nick Fury's words, the SHIELD agents who were trying to get onto the execution platform stopped. After looking at each other, they left Times Square unwillingly and took a car back to the New York branch. Time passes little by little. When Times Square was packed with onlookers, Roy teleported to the execution platform. Under the gaze of everyone, he raised his fingers and snapped them. Along with the sound of snapping fingers, a crystal-clear frost throne appeared out of thin air on the execution platform. Roy sat down slowly and glanced at the people in the audience. The originally noisy Times Square became extremely quiet after he appeared. You must all be curious about why I offered a bounty on Bucky Barnes tonight. The reason is simple. He disguised himself as a courier and sent a time bomb to my house while I was away. The one who ordered him to do this was Nick Fury, the current director of SHIELD. Half a year ago, I publicly announced here that I am a Blood Angel, and I also made it very clear, don't mess with me. Maybe it's because I've been keeping a low profile in recent months, or maybe some people think I'm just bluffing. I'm repeating this for the last time tonight, don't fucking mess with me. I'm not a good person, but I don't mind being an executioner with bloody hands. If anyone dares to provoke me in the future, I can guarantee that you will die a more miserable death than those two. After saying this, Roy did not hesitate at all and immediately used the Iceman's superpowers to create 4 ice clones in front of everyone. Under his control, the 4 ice clones divided into 2 groups and came to Nick Fury and Bucky. Roy first released Bucky from his frozen state, allowing him to regain consciousness. As his consciousness returned, Bucky's first reaction was to attack the ice clone in front of him. His movements were fast, but his ice clones were even faster. In just a moment, the ice clone controlled by Roy broke his right hand and legs, and forcibly pulled off his mechanical left arm. When the ice clone subdued Bucky, Roy created 2 giant frost crosses on the execution platform. Under his manipulation, Nick Fury and Bucky were hung on the frost cross. What is he going to do? The same question flashed through the minds of reporters and onlookers. Soon, they knew what Roy was going to do. After hanging Nick Fury and Bucky, a scalpel-like sharp ice knife appeared in the ice clone's hand. Lingchi. Roy is going to torture Nick Fury and Bucky to death. Ah 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 ah. Nick Fury and Bucky let out miserable howls. The ice clone was like a butcher, constantly cutting Nick Fury and Bucky's bodies with an ice knife, cutting off pieces of their flesh in front of everyone. After seeing this scene, everyone at the scene couldn't help but take a breath. The images that were originally being broadcast live were all covered with thick mosaics or stopped. Although this was not the first time Roy killed someone in public, no one expected that he would execute Nick Fury and Bucky by slow slicing. The screams of Nick Fury and Bucky echoed throughout Times Square like a symphony. At the beginning, there were still many onlookers who could stick with it. But as the dismemberment became more and more serious, most of the onlookers chose to leave. If possible, reporters, photographers and New York police at the scene also considered leaving. A bloody scene like a nightmare coupled with miserable howling sounds. Not to mention ordinary people, even among the soldiers in the army, not many people can withstand such a bloody scene. Roy decided to execute Nick Fury and Bucky by slow slicing, not only to show his cruel side, but also to warn those who had bad intentions. He wanted to let others know that if they provoked him, they would not only die, but also die in agony. End of this chapter. Chapter 98, Captain America and Number 039, S Darkness. Chapter 98, Captain America's Darkness. The bloody and cruel execution lasted for a full half-hour. Under Roy's control, the ice clone in charge of the execution was like a top surgeon, physically separating the flesh and blood of Nick Fury and Bucky. The cut pieces of meat were scattered all over the ground, the blood dyed the execution platform made of ice red, and the strong smell of blood drifted everywhere with the night wind. Except for reporters, photographers, and New York police who could not leave due to work, the crowd in Times Square decreased from the huge crowd at the beginning to a sparse number of a dozen or 20 people. The New York police at the scene directly blocked the entire Times Square and implemented traffic control on the surrounding streets to prevent passers-by from witnessing this bloody scene. Although the execution was broadcast live by some media, watching the heavily mosaiced live footage on TV and the internet is completely different from witnessing it with your own eyes. When only the incomplete skeleton of Nick Fury's Bucky was left on the frost cross, Roy raised his right hand and snapped his fingers. With the sound of snapping fingers, the ice clones in front of Nick Fury and Bucky stopped their actions, and their crystal-like frost bodies dissipated in the wind like smoke. After only 2 or 3 seconds, the ice clone responsible for the execution completely disappeared, as if it had never appeared. After removing the ice clone, Roy decisively used the Ghost Cat's teleportation ability and disappeared from the sight of reporters and police. After seeing that Roy had no intention of staying for the interview, the reporters who had wanted to leave early in the morning did not hesitate at all. They immediately ordered the photographers who were traveling with them and left Times Square without looking back. Madman! A complete lunatic! I'm going to have nightmares tonight. As these reporters and photographers left, they complained about Roy in their hearts. They thought that Roy would announce and explain some inside information that could be used to make news headlines, just like he did at the press conference half a year ago. It turns out that they thought too much. Apart from explaining why he wanted to execute Nick Fury and Bucky, and once again warning the world not to mess with him, Roy said nothing. Although what he said and the slow execution of Nick Fury are enough to make tomorrow's headlines. But for the reporters who rushed to Times Square and witnessed the entire execution process, these gains were too little. Soon, reporters and photographers from major media outlets left Times Square. "Boss, what should we do now? Should we send someone up to collect the bodies?" A young policeman in his early 20s asked the middle-aged police chief beside him. "We will wait for the order from above. We will do whatever they tell us to do. Until then, continue to block this place." The middle-aged sheriff sighed helplessly and spoke slowly. Although Roy had left and the execution was completely over, the middle-aged sheriff still didn't dare to send anyone to collect the body. God knows if Roy will come back later. Besides, until Roy was sure that he had completely calmed down and didn't mind if someone else collected the bodies of Nick Fury and Bucky, the best thing to do was to do nothing. Not surprisingly, Roy's slow execution of Nick Fury and Bucky in Times Square became headlines on major media, news channels, social networking sites, and search engines. Inside a holding room at S.H.I.E.L.'s New York branch, Captain America Rogers, who was wearing plain clothes, attacked the door of the detention room with a crazy look on his face. He shouted loudly as if he had completely lost control. "Let me out! I order you to let me out immediately!" In the observation room next to the detention room, Coulson and Hawkeye looked at the surveillance screen in front of them with serious expressions and said nothing. When Captain America Rogers temporarily stopped roaring and attacking, Hawkeye leaned over and said to the microphone in front of him, "Captain, we will not let you out until you calm down completely. Besides, Times Square is over. Director Fury and Bucky are dead." Hawkeye's words were transmitted to Captain America Rogers through the loudspeaker in the detention room. Hearing his words, Captain America Rogers clenched his fists uncontrollably, veins popped out on his forehead and neck, his chest heaved violently, and he felt an uncontrollable intense anger and sadness in his heart. He had originally intended to come and convince Roy to cancel the bounty on Bucky. Unexpectedly, as soon as his Quinjet landed on the tarmac of the New York branch, Coulson and Hawkeye came to him with a Special Forces team. Before he could say anything, the Special Forces team members pulled the trigger and fired dozens of tranquilizer darts at him in the cabin. Although his body functions had been enhanced to the human limit, in the closed space of the cabin, he didn't even have the chance to pick up the vibranium shield before he was hit by more than a dozen anesthetic darts with dosages specially adjusted for him. When he woke up in the holding cell, Coulson and Hawkeye did not hide it from him anymore, and told him about Roy's slow execution of Nick Fury and Bucky in Times Square. The next thing was very simple. Captain America immediately lost control and frantically attacked the metal door of the detention room. After taking a few deep breaths and suppressing his anger and sadness, Captain America turned to look at the surveillance camera in the detention room and asked, "Where are their bodies?" "Still on the icy execution platform in Times Square," Coulson replied. Hearing Coulson's answer, Captain America roared again. "You guys don't even dare to send someone to collect the bodies. Are you worthy of Fury's trust? Are you worthy of your status as a senior agent of S.H.I.E.L.D? Let me out immediately. Otherwise don't blame me for being rude to you." Looking at Captain America who was roaring madly, Coulson and Hawkeye sighed helplessly. If possible, they also wanted to send someone over immediately to collect the bodies of Nick Fury and Bucky. But the problem is that no one knows what Roy is thinking now. If they rashly sent people to collect the bodies, Roy might use this as an excuse to go to war with S.H.I.E.L.D. By then, the number of people who died at Roy's hands would be thousands times more than it is now. This is Director Fury's final order. Before the new director issues the latest order, S.H.I.E.L.D. will faithfully carry out Director Fury's last order. Coulson said into the microphone in front of him. An order from the new director. Ha 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 ha. Ha 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 ha. As expected of S.H.I.E.L.D., they are following orders, ha 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 ha. Very good, really good, Ha 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 ha. After hearing Coulson's answer, Captain America in the detention room laughed wildly as if he had heard a particularly funny joke. Looking at Captain America laughing wildly, Coulson and Hawkeye's expressions suddenly became extremely ugly. Even if you use your toes to think, you can tell that Captain America is completely disappointed with SHIELD. Not only that, judging from Captain America's current reaction, his mental and personality are also beginning to become unstable. To put it simply, Captain America turned evil right in front of them. Just as Coulson and Hawkeye guessed, Captain America, who was laughing wildly, soon stopped. Then, with a cold expression and a tone they had never heard before, he spoke word by word. "Till death. Roy who killed Bucky will die, and you who stood by and watched him die will also die. You'd better not let me escape, otherwise you will regret it." After saying that, the cold expression on Captain America's face suddenly disappeared without a trace. He whistled leisurely, pulled out the chair in front of him, and slowly sat up. Perhaps the chair was not comfortable enough, so he adjusted his posture, raised his feet and placed them on the table, holding his head with his hands, and hummed a self-composed tune as if he was improvising. "La la la, righteous Captain America, brave Captain America, omnipotent Captain America. Fully armed, fighting bloody battles, invincible, defeating the enemy. The enemy's fear satisfies me, the enemy's blood excites me, I am the omnipotent and invincible Captain America. A mountain of corpses and a sea of blood, killing them all, the demons are terrified, the angels are crying, I will gain the respect of all life." End of this chapter. Chapter 99 Presidential Pardon. Chapter 99 Presidential Pardon. When Coulson and Hawkeye saw Captain America humming a little tune of his own while sitting in a chair, they knew that the situation was heading for the worst. When they found out that the person Roy wanted to put a bounty on was Bucky, they guessed that Captain America would definitely not sit idly by. Bucky is Captain America's most important friend, second only to his parents. If it weren't for Bucky, the frail and sickly boy would have died in some unknown alley long ago. They guessed that Captain America would be angry and out of control. But they didn't expect that Captain America would turn evil in front of them. Sighing helplessly, Hawkeye said to Coulson, "Call all senior agents to the New York branch. Before the new director takes office, we can only decide on future actions through internal discussions." After hearing Hawkeye's words, Coulson frowned and said, "Agents Hill and Romanoff were also notified." "Notify me? No matter what, they are still senior agents of SHIELD." Hawkeye said slowly. He didn't particularly agree with Nick Fury's arrangement of Black Widow and Agent Hill to use a honey trap on Roy. He knew that this was a well-considered decision by Nick Fury that would ease the relationship between S.H.I.E.L.D. and Roy and buy S.H.I.E.L.D. more time to prepare. But he still felt that letting Black Widow and Agent Hill use the honey trap was not a good decision. As it turned out, his concerns were justified. "Okay, I'll have someone notify all the senior agents to come over." After saying that, Coulson left the observation room. When Coulson left, Hawkeye looked at Captain America on the surveillance screen without saying a word. Pentagon. In a high-level conference room filled with smoke, 20 or 30 senior U.S. military generals sat in the conference room staring at each other. Before Roy executed Nick Fury and Bucky, they received the news that Nick Fury had been captured. Then not long after, they received a call for an emergency meeting. Although Nick Fury is not a member of the military, he is now an important partner of the military. When the President authorized the military and S.H.I.E.L.D. to jointly implement the top threat plan, S.H.I.E.L.D. and the military, which had originally had a not-so-good relationship, began to cooperate more closely than ever before. In addition to close cooperation in personnel, equipment, technology, intelligence, etc., the military and S.H.I.E.L.D. also secretly organized more than a dozen secret exercises. As for the purpose of the drill, it was of course to confirm that the number one threat plan could successfully eliminate Roy. Seeing that no one in the conference room was going to speak, an Air Force general said, this is not the first time that Roy Chen has killed someone in public. If he dared to execute Nick Fury in Times Square tonight, he will dare to bring us and other senior government officials to Times Square and execute them tomorrow. If no one has an idea, let's vote. Those who agree to execute the top threat plan ahead of schedule may raise their hands now. After saying this, the Air Force Admiral sitting at the front of the conference table was the first to raise his right hand. The other generals in the conference room immediately exchanged glances, and some of them slowly raised their right hands. Not even 10? After seeing that less than 10 generals agreed to implement the plan ahead of schedule, the Air Force general who initiated the proposal suddenly looked gloomy. Just as he was about to say something, General Ross, who was sitting with other army generals, suddenly said, "I think we can discuss this issue later." "What's the reason?" the Air Force general who proposed it immediately asked. After Nick Fury's death, no one in SHIELD had enough authority to cooperate with us in carrying out the top threat plan. Without the authorization of the Director of S.H.I.E.L.D., other people in S.H.I.E.L.D. may not be willing to cooperate with us unconditionally. In addition, as far as I know, S.H.I.E.L.D. also has a plan to deal with Roy Chen. S.H.I.E.L.D.'s consistent style, I don't need to tell you all know it. They would be more inclined to deal with Roy Chen alone than to join forces. So my suggestion is to hold off for now and wait until the President completes the appointment of a new director of SHIELD. General Ross said slowly. If the plan to deal with Roy's number one threat does not require the cooperation of S.H.I.E.L.D., he will also agree to implement the number one threat plan in advance and completely eliminate Roy, the unstable factor. But the problem is that S.H.I.E.L.D. is a key part of the top threat plan. Without the unconditional cooperation of S.H.I.E.L.D., it would be impossible to successfully implement the plan with the strength of the military alone. By then, let alone completely eliminating Roy, it would be a question whether the Pentagon would become a historical term. After listening to General Ross's explanation, the generals who had not raised their hands just now spoke up to express their opinions. "I agree with Ross." "Me too." "Me too." In just a dozen seconds, more than half of the generals agreed with General Ross's suggestion. After everyone expressed their opinions, the Air Force general who proposed to implement the plan ahead of schedule frowned slightly and said slowly, "I will report your opinions to the President. It's getting late, so I won't stop you from going back to rest." After saying that, the Air Force general stood up and left the meeting room without looking back. Washington, D.C. An internal meeting is also being held in the Oval Office of the White House, where only a few people can attend. This internal meeting did not last long. The meeting ended after less than 10 minutes of discussion. After the meeting, the White House immediately held a press conference. The press conference did not contain much content, it could even be said to be very brief, with only 4 points. First, remove Nick Fury from his position as director of SHIELD. Second, the appointment of the new director of S.H.I.E.L.D. will be officially announced in 3 days. Third, Nick Fury sent someone to deliver a time bomb to Roy's house as a private act, not an official mission of SHIELD. Fourth, the President signed a pardon, and the authorities will not hold Roy legally responsible for the private execution of Nick Fury and Bucky in Times Square. Manhattan Sky Building. Roy sat on the sofa in the living room and watched the press conference held by the White House. When he heard the spokesperson say that the President had signed the pardon, he smiled disdainfully. On paper, the President pardoned him for the murder in Times Square. But in reality, the purpose of this pardon is not to pardon his crimes, but to serve as a fig leaf for the White House. At a press conference half a year ago, he publicly announced that he did not recognize any American laws and did not accept the rule and jurisdiction of the U.S. government. Also, this isn't the first time he's killed someone in Times Square. Half a year ago, he shot a redneck's head with a shock beam in front of everyone, and left the heads of John Garrett and Grant Ward at the scene. That time, the White House chose to take the cold shoulder and did not comment on his killing of rednecks, John Garrett and others. Although the White House did not continue to choose the cold treatment this time, it still chose to give in. The only difference is that this time the White House used the presidential pardon as a fig leaf to save some face for itself. End of this chapter. Chapter 100 America, the Weak and the Strong. Chapter 100 America, the Weak and the Strong. It seems that they have learned their lesson this time and know how to save themselves. Daisy curled up on the sofa like a kitten, resting her head on Roy's thighs, and spoke slowly. Roy stroked her hair and said with a smile, "It's not that they have learned their lesson, but they can't handle it as coldly as before this time. Forget about Bucky, but Nick Fury is the director of SHIELD, an official high-ranking official. Although I have killed many people in the official and military systems before, they were Hydra spies after all. They could choose to turn a blind eye. It's different now. If they don't find a way out, then they will only have the choice of going to war with me. They don't have the courage, nor are they qualified enough to start a full-scale war with me, so they can only choose to surrender." Roy was not surprised that the White House would choose to surrender again. Because this is the consistent style of the American government. Bully the weak and fear the strong. When the enemy is weak, they dare to put all kinds of blame on the enemy, including but not limited to violations of human rights, terrorism, possession of weapons of mass destruction, etc. However, when the enemy is as strong as them or even stronger than them, they will change their previous domineering style and start trying to reason with the other side. Take the present for example. The White House said at the press conference that Nick Fury's decision to send the time bomb was a personal act, and that it was a manifestation of his desire to take the initiative to reason. If they don't give in this time, will you really go to war with them? Daisy sat up and looked at Roy with curiosity. Of course. As long as they dare to declare war on me, I don't mind making the United States disappear completely. Roy replied. Although doing so would make him a public enemy in the eyes of Americans, he didn't care at all. Public enemy is public enemy, no big deal. Not to mention Americans, even if the entire Western world regarded him as a public enemy, he would not take it to heart. After hearing Roy's answer, Daisy didn't ask any more questions. She lay down again and rested her head on Roy's thighs. Time passes little by little. When the theater's performance was over, Mary Jane returned, escorted by members of the Order of the Star Cross. Mary Jane returned home without any hesitation. She immediately sat down to Roy's right and asked about what happened tonight. Roy did not hide anything from her and briefly explained the whole story. After listening to his story, Mary Jane looked at Daisy with an apologetic look on her face and said slowly, "It's all my fault that I usually buy too many things online. Otherwise, you wouldn't be so easily fooled tonight. It's all my fault." Although Daisy is the same age as herself, Mary Jane knows that Daisy is a very qualified female warrior. In addition to possessing shockwave superpowers, Daisy is also quite good at close combat. Whether it was the control and development of superpowers or combat skills, Roy trained them all personally. In addition, she occasionally participates in some actual combat. For example, when Roy captured the capital of Wakanda, she, Norman and his son, and other members of the Star-Crossed Knights stopped everyone who tried to enter the capital of Wakanda. That's why she remained so calm after Bucky activated the time bomb with the horizontal device. It's none of your business. Even if you don't usually shop online, he will disguise himself as someone else and send the bomb to you. For example, delivery men, maintenance workers, the FBI, etc. Daisy said calmly. That being said, Mary Jane still felt bad. After seeing the annoyed expression on her face, Daisy continued, "If you really feel bad, then you will sleep alone tonight. No, you will sleep alone for the next 3 days." What? Mary Jane looked at Daisy in surprise. Okay, stop teasing her. Just live your life the way you want in the future. There's no need to change your lifestyle for some insignificant guy. If anyone sends dangerous things here again, I'll just send them to hell. Roy said slowly. Daisy and Mary Jane nodded at the same time. S.H.I.E.L.D.'s New York branch. Meeting room. Coulson, Hawkeye, Black Widow, Agent Hill, and several other senior agents sat on both sides of the conference table. No one spoke, just looking at everyone else in silence. In addition to them, those senior agents who were unable to arrive at the New York branch in a short period of time also participated in this internal meeting of senior agents via video conference. When the last senior agent came online, Coulson, who was sitting at the first seat on the right side of the conference table, said slowly, "The current situation is clear to everyone without me saying anything. The appointment of the new director will not be announced until 3 days later. Before that, everyone present here will be the top leadership of S.H.I.E.L.D. There are two main issues now. One is whether we should send someone to collect Director Fury's body. The other is that Rogers is in a very bad psychological and mental state right now, and has developed a strong hatred for Roy and S.H.I.E.L.D. While both of these issues can wait until the new director takes office, it is best to resolve them before the new director takes office if possible. We can wait. Chief Fury's body won't wait long." After saying that, Coulson's eyes immediately fell on Black Widow. Among the people present, Black Widow and Roy have the best relationship. Although Agent Hill also had an intimate relationship with Roy, she had much less private contact with Roy than Black Widow. "If you want me to go find Roy, just tell me straight away. There's no need to beat around the bush," Black Widow said quickly after noticing Coulson's eyes landed on her. "Yes, I hope you can go and see Roy, or give him a call. Although I don't know why Director Fury arranged for Bucky Barnes to deliver the time bomb, he has already executed them both in public with a cruel method of 1,000 cuts. Judging from the fact that he left Times Square directly, he must have calmed down," Coulson said quickly as he looked at Black Widow. "You make it sound so simple, then why don't you go find him yourself or give him a call? Don't tell me you don't know where he lives or what his phone number is. You can easily find this information from the Bureau's database." Black Widow asked Coulson back. After hearing what Black Widow said, Coulson said calmly without any hesitation, "Because I am not familiar with him." Although he had met Roy several times, he had never spoken a word to Roy, let alone contacted Roy privately like Black Widow and Agent Hill. Black Widow glanced at everyone. When she noticed that everyone's eyes were on her, she knew that others also approved of Coulson's arrangement. Under the gaze of everyone, she stood up and left the meeting room. Although she didn't say it, Coulson and the others knew that she was going to call Roy. A few minutes later, Black Widow returned to the conference room. "You can collect the body, but it has to be 48 hours later." Those are Roy's exact words. Black Widow said to Coulson and others. End of this chapter. Like and subscribe.